Will you please all rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for joining us in this July 12th public session of the Board of Trustees. As usual, we'll begin the session with the Employee of the Month. This month it's Ted Hedges. Is he here? I'm waiting for an employee to come.
Every now and again you do get one, but they leave it earlier.
But Tim Hedges works for the Parks Department. He's groundskeeper too. His date of hire was May 23rd, 2006. And I will read to you what Ken Booth wrote about him. I've noticed, as have others, that Tim just keeps on going. He does all of the mulch around the village trees and plantings on his own. Tim always has a smile and works hard all day and every day. Tim, we thank you and we award you with the Employee of the Month, for which we got a great photo of you and a plaque to give you when we see you. The next session of this meeting is public comment, which looks like numerous people signed up. I would just say that some of the things that you signed up for are going to be on public hearings. So rather than doing a short comment, because your comments have to be kept to 3 minutes, you may want to speak at the public hearing. I'll read through and see if you want to hold for the public meeting or speak now. And if you speak now, please try to keep it to a 3-minute. Dennis Wachola.
Yeah, I think I would rather speak at the public hearing. I had no idea how this works.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Harold Studi.
Good evening. My name is Harold Studi. I live at 56 Tuckahoe Lane. I'm just a little bit outside of the village. I'm here to ask you about every year we used to get a yearly audit, whether it was a school district or a village, and they would put down different items as to where they would be placed. I'm just curious as to where you are placing the $50,000 reimbursement that's owed by Bonnie Cannon and how that was done and why nothing has been done with it. Some of us, myself included, paid for our major medical while we were not trustees or on the board. I know that there's a balance due, and I have the letters here from Mr. Epley that have been dated. And I'm just curious, all these years have gone by and really nothing has transpired from that. Can you speak to that? Or maybe you can't. I don't know.
No, I can speak to it, Harold. Bonnie actually settled her account. She worked an arrangement with then Mayor Epley, and although it wasn't the full amount, she did settle what was agreed upon.
How can you, the village, forgive monies that basically don't belong to you?
It wasn't my decision at the time, but probably it was a business decision that either they get most of it or they don't get any of it. So I think that was the mindset.
Is that paperwork available?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Heidi Brown?
Hi, I'm Heidi Brown, and I live on Jennings Avenue, and I just wanted to try to sort out
Are you
what...
here on the public hearing number 5, on the parking restrictions on
Yes.
Jennings?
Yeah, you might want to wait for the public hearing section.
When is that? Oh, it's later
It's
in this
tonight.
meeting?
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, it's not another meeting, it happens right after this.
I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Got it.
No,
Thank you.
it happens, for anybody who wants to know, it happens right after this, so if you want to speak about any one of these topics, hold on to it, and then we'll announce public hearings right after this, and then you can go.
It looks like Franklin Trotter? Trainer. Which you wanted, the deer fence? Okay. John Bennett?
I thought there was a general sign-in sheet.
Okay.
I'll wait for the parking. Sorry, Mike.
Maureen Flanagan?
Same, public,
Okay. Mary Crow?
public hearing.
Okay. Looks like Eric Ruttenberg.
Hi, my name is Eric Ruttenberg. I live at 82 Captain's Neck Lane in Southampton, and I also vote in Southampton. I'm an opposing neighbor in the Zuhusky application to subdivide his property on Hill Street. I'm here with my attorney, Jeff Bragman, to formally and directly communicate to the village trustees about a serious issue of planning policy, which I think the village board needs to understand and consider. I've come before this board because you are the legislature of this village and are responsible for the administration of the laws which have been duly enacted over the years. The village code regulates the subdivision process. Those subdivision rules impose certain requirements for the use of flag lots. I want to focus the board's attention on Village Code section 97-38H1, which is part of the current subdivision law. The statute expressly prohibits the creation of new flag lots in any application that seeks to subdivide property within the village. The Zuhusky application seeks to re-subdivide his Hill Street property. The prohibition against using flag lots in a re-subdivision is an important zoning policy which another elected village board of trustees, just like yourselves, duly enacted into law. It remains a current subdivision policy. It is a strong statement of policy that re-subdivisions should not be permitted if they require the creation of flag lots. Flag lots are lots that are configured in the shape of a flag. The flag portion, generally rectangular, is the buildable lot area, while the pole, which is long and narrow, contains the access that leads to a street. What is wrong with flag lots that made another board of trustees prohibit their use in re-subdividing property? The answer is suggested in another provision of the subdivision law, Village Code 116-11F4, which permits flag lots to be created in a new subdivision, but not a re-subdivision of land. However, those flag lots are required to have a lot greater than the normal lot area for an ordinary rectangular lot located in the same district. The amount of required additional lot area depends on the zoning district in which the land to be subdivided is located. The reason for this rule is obvious. A flag lot consumes some of its total lot area in the flagpole, which delineates the access, reducing the remaining buildable lot area contained in the rectangular portion of the lot. To ensure that flag lots would be sized appropriately in comparison to ordinary rectangular lots, the trustees required that they be designed to contain additional buildable lot area. To compensate for the loss of the lot area contained in the flagpole portion. The Zuhusky application at 550 Hill Street creates two lots which look and function exactly like flag lots. The lots are landlocked as neither has actual frontage on a public road. Both use a long, narrow access across an adjacent lot leading to the street. Neither lot has actual frontage on the public street. Although they look and function like flag lots, neither lot can conform to lot area requirements for flag lots. Simply stated, the Zuhusky property is too small to comply with the village flag lot area requirements. To evade the flag lot requirements, the subdivision design employed easements to create the access instead of permanent dedicated flagpoles as part of the lots themselves. An easement is a use right, not a deeded ownership right. In this way, neither lot is technically a flag lot. However, both function in exactly the same way. The use of an easement of a deeded flagpole access is an evasion of the lot area requirements for flag lots. The ZBA, on which Mr. Zuhusky has long served as a member, has granted him some 17 variances for the re-subdivision in an effort to help him create 3 new lots and evade the lot area requirements for flag lots. Although the ZBA can grant variances, it lacks the power to actually draw lot lines to create new lots. This power is within the sole discretion of the Planning Board. The Planning Board is the only board authorized to create new lots by drawing new lot lines. Its purposes and policies are different from the ZBA and are enunciated in the subdivision statutes contained in Village Code Chapter 97. In reviewing a subdivision, the Planning Board should recognize and comply with the applicable village planning policies. Those policies include the statutory requirement that flag lots contain extra lot area. No village record shows that the Planning Board ever permitted a subdivision that created lots that looked and functioned like flag lots, but which did comply with the lot area requirements for flag lots. Likewise, there is no record of the ZBA ever granting any application involving 17 variances. Neither action represents good planning. Both actions suggest flagrant favoritism and overt bias. The village trustees and the planning board should not allow an applicant to accomplish indirectly what he is prohibited from doing directly. The issuance of variances by the ZBA to one of its members, I might add, does not tie the planning board's hands. The planning board need not and should not follow suit, ignore the applicable planning policies concerning flag lots. Simply stated, there is no legal justification to erase well-established planning policies to create substandard lots for a village insider. Approval of the Zuhusky subdivision makes a mockery of the rule of law.
Mr. Ruttenberg,
I'm almost finished. It suggests that influence matters in village zoning decisions. It will incite justifiable cynicism that the law holds firm for the many, but it bends for the few. It's time for you to act. This is an issue of good planning policy for the village, and whether you as village trustees are willing to allow precedent to be set that will create another avenue for the overdevelopment of Southampton by allowing flag lots to be created in a clear violation of the spirit and the letter of the village code. The village board should correspond on the record with the planning board to express its disapproval and concern over this proposal to create 3 lots by circumventing well-considered and long-established zoning policy enacted by the village trustees.
Thank you. Would you do me a favor, though? Could we get a copy of that, or would you like to
circulate it to me, or is that a different one?
I'll send it to you or give it to you, whatever you'd like.
I think you sent it to me, didn't you? I'll take that one.
No, this is
something different.
This is something different.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next to Jennifer Preston is in
Public hearing, please.
Okay, and then Peter, I think is public hearing also. Looks like Hildreth parking.
Yeah, I'll reserve my comments for the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that said, moving ahead, we have no board presentations tonight, but we have several public hearings. First public hearing we have is on the deer fence law. So I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the deer fence law.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Just to give you an update, I met with a fellow, this was Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, this Wednesday? Yeah, this past Wednesday, that does deer culling in Manhasset, a number of North Shore communities, all along the North Coast there. And he has a set plan on finding lot sizes, getting the setbacks and everything from property lines and houses, and a way to manage deer culling in what I think is a very sensible and reasonable manner, which I think will help resolve our problem, as I think fencing in the entire community, you're only shifting them. He also brought up a number of interesting issues. He said that the majority of vehicle accidents with deer are usually in areas where there are deer fences. And he also brought up that the trouble with the deer fences is they're non-selective. They'll keep out everything that wants to migrate through an area. And there was a number of other things that he brought up that was negative on deer fence. So, you know, when we're going forward and we're looking at these fences, those are things we need to consider. The other difficulty is most of your deer fences, unless they're 8-10 feet tall, are not going to stop a deer. They're going to try to get over that fence. And if any of you have come across a deer that's entangled in a deer fence, it's not a real pretty sight. So, with that said, is there any comments from the...
I'd like to add that.
Okay.
I was at the meeting with Michael.
Yeah.
And actually, prior to the meeting, I was in favor of deer fences until I met with him. And in all honesty, we're going to have him come to our meeting 2 Tuesdays from now, the next meeting. He'll come and speak. He wasn't available this evening, and it's amazing how he has organized this. It's probably the most organized I have ever seen in hunting the deer. We don't like to consider it hunting. We consider it culling. The herds, they know where they are. They set up stands and they wait for them. They take them away. And if in fact one gets away that's injured, they look for it, they find it, they get it, they take it away. And they have been very, very successful. He's been hired by golf clubs all over Long Island. He actually is a very well organized, incredibly well organized, but I want you all to spend some time with him and see it, whether you watch it on the TV or you come to the next meeting. Because once he spent some time with us and he explained how different areas fenced in and how it pushed the deer in different areas where they were running in the road and people were having accidents all over the place. And that's something that we don't want to have happen. I think part of the reason why we talked about the deer fencing is because the village let it go. I mean, we allowed the deer to multiply in such a way that now everybody's panic-stricken and we have to protect ourselves. Well, we really have to thin the herd. I mean, that's basically what we have to do. And it's ongoing. It's not like we're going to thin them and never have to look at it again, because they'll continue to multiply. So I'd really like everybody to wait until this next session, see what this man has to do. I think we would start in October. That's when we can do it. And he'll give you a schedule of what he wants to do, and we're going to do it this time.
One of the difficulties of the fencing concept is it does eliminate deer out of the fenced-in area, obviously, but the deer themselves then move to other areas where the food sources, the water sources, etc., may not be as efficient as where they've been, and you end up with a group of deer that are half-starved and manged, and it's just not the humane way to handle it. If you have an overabundance of something like deer, then you cull them so that they have a group in numbers that are sustainable.
And the other thing is that not everybody can afford the deer fencing. So those that can will push the deer to those people who can't. And so that's an issue that we have right there. So I'm asking everybody to be a little patient, wait another 2 weeks, meet with this, either come back to the meeting or watch it on television. And I think you'll be pretty amazed at what they do and how efficient they are.
Any comments from the public?
Well, Michael, before you do that, just for the record, I just want to remind the board that as required on any zoning amendment, you ask the Village Planning Commission to give you a report. They did provide you with a letter dated or a memo July 5th, so that's in the record. And also, my understanding is today, the building inspector also provided you a letter of comments as well. And one of the comments that came up was that the deer management issue, which is what the board members are discussing, is one that transcends the village boundaries. In that regard, we did happen to look at the Town of Southampton website, and they have published and adopted a deer management program, which I provided you with a copy, and that should be made available so that you can see what the town is doing, and maybe there's some coordination of those efforts as well.
Yeah, without, I mean, you aren't looking at a species that sits right next to your, 1 acre lot. They have a tendency to move. So and the council is 100% right. The coordination between the village and the town is very important, especially in number management. Any comments from the public?
My name is Franklin Fletter. I live in Whitefield. I just picked up, before the meeting started, this legislation. I've been following it closely, and this one has certain portions that are in red, and I'm not unclear as to what the significance, particularly in light of what was said, of this being handed out this evening.
Well, the items in red are still up for discussion on the part of the board as possible amendments.
And that discussion won't take place this evening, is that?
They're available for comment, if you'd like to comment.
No, but in the light, it seems that this is all going to be put off till October, till you can consider culling.
I don't know when the board is deciding that to be, but at least I hear one board member suggesting 2 meetings be kept open. So
I think there's 2 parts to controlling the deer situation. One part is the fencing, and the other part is the culling. And if you do either one without the other, you may not have the success that you want. So,
This document with the red insertion of 20,000 square feet seems very interesting, particularly as it relates to Whitefield. So is this something that could be discussed and possibly passed this evening?
Well, no, I would leave it open.
No, it's not going to be.
That's not what's intended.
But if you have comment, we'd like to hear your comment.
Everything, it's all a surprise. Completely different from previous hearings. So particularly, it doesn't seem that a comment is worthwhile because the decision is to put this off until October.
No, your comment is very worthwhile. So if you have a comment,
I don't have any comment because I'm surprised. I would like to have this passed with respect to the 20,000 square feet, because I think that Whitefield would be eligible under that. But then people are shaking their heads, that's no. So I don't know.
We're not saying that it's never going to be.
No,
That's what I
meant,
want you to understand. We're not saying that.
The problem is the longer it's put off, I don't want to make the same speech from last time. Whitefield has landscaping that was designed by Olmsted from Central Park and Prospect Park. Over the years, it didn't survive by age. It's not the way it was when it was an amazing prize, but it was very effective. It's now been all destroyed. If you went and looked at it, it's just as high as deer can get. All the foliage, everything has been eaten, and it's completely bare. And so it's a complete catastrophe. And there's the stuff with the ticks and the Lyme disease. And what's happening tomorrow is what counts, not what happens in October in the grand scheme. The Planning Commission did a good job of hearing this. I think they spent about an hour and a half on it, and it was a very interesting discussion. So I'll just close with one thought that I gave there. I happen to own a cooperative apartment in Manhattan, and it made me think that if you have, which happens in Manhattan, you have cockroaches in your apartment. The building helps, they call it exterminators. It's likely that many of the cockroaches in an apartment that's fumigated move to another apartment. The thought here is that because you have a fence, they're going to move elsewhere. But the point is that you're depriving individuals. This law is an elective law, making somebody have a chance to protect their property, just like you could protect your apartment from cockroaches. What you're doing here is you're moving to a grand scheme that may be wonderful. I don't know if you mentioned the name of the person, but somebody's going to come here and talk about this in October.
No, it's not in October, it's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
He's coming in 2 weeks at our meeting on a Tuesday night in 2 weeks to discuss that. That's why I would like everybody to come back, those people who are interested, and hear what he has to say, at which point we're going to make some decisions on this. And the culling of the herd will probably take place in October because you can't hunt until then.
Right, but there's two things. There's grand schemes like culling, birth control for deer, whatever you can think of. And then there's immediate problems of protecting property. Those are two different thoughts.
I know, but can I just say something?
Sure, you got to recharge.
What you're experiencing at Whitefield, everyone is experiencing throughout the village. Cooper's Farm has their issues. That backs up to you. I mean, it's all over, and everybody's talking about how all their plants are being killed, and it's.
That's why you need both. Otherwise, the killing goes on, the danger goes on, and the looking for a major solution goes on. So what you're doing is depriving not just Whitefield, but all these other people from the chance of having a fence erected, which is not perfect, which has other problems, and true, it's expensive, and some people may not be able to. Those are all valid points, but they don't go to saying no deer fence allowed while we reinvent the wheel. That's the problem. I doubt that you're going to solve this problem 2 weeks from now.
We won't solve the problem until October because that's when they can hunt. Okay, so, but here's the point. When we had our meeting with him, he said, right now you are seeing them everywhere, and that's true. And he said, I promise you that when we finish with this, you won't see them at all. So I think that's a really great way of going, and at which point we'll address the fencing at the same time.
I'll leave you alone, you have a lot to do. When they constructed a 6-foot deer fence at Whitefield, they thought that would do it. The deer jumps over from the village latch and missed my wife's car. I reported that last time.
6 feet, no.
It's a joke. But, so, the road, there's much more important problems in the world.
We're going to get there.
Right, okay. Thank you. No, I just need to
You know, I just want to say one interesting thing that he brought up I thought was very interesting, is everybody has a concern of Lyme disease and ticks, and for good reason on the east end of Long Island. But he had indicated that when he takes an animal, he logs in all the information on it, the weight, the size, the age, everything about that animal. And the one thing that they've noticed is when they're culling herds in more residential areas, such as our area, the deer have a minimal amount of ticks on them, and it's usually from the fact that most of these yards are all sprayed anyway, and the deer themselves running through the brush and running through your flowers, unfortunately, are picking up the sprays. And he found it really interesting. He said that if you take a deer that's outside of Long Island in Westchester or somewhere in the woods, and you skin them, you can see hundreds and hundreds of deer tick marks on the inside of the skin, whereas when you take a deer in the residential area here, there's very few. So it's, you know.
The statute of limitations has run on me. I'm here for 42 years. And I lived on Halsey Neck Lane, and my wife had a rose garden. The deer were eating them. We put up an 8-foot deer fence without permission. You couldn't see it, it was invisible. It solved the problem 100%. We sold our house, they knocked it down. Before they knocked it down, someone came from Sag Harbor with a truck and took all the rose plants away and planted them wherever they are because the thing was so successful. You're denying people the opportunity to do that while you're going to see it, whether the world is round or flat. That's the problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Yes. Francis.
My name is Frances Genovese. I live at 209 Bishop's Lane in a house with a circular drive that can't be fenced off. I couldn't hear most of the discussion in the back of the room, so I hope that I'm not duplicating what anyone said, but some things I did think I heard. This law, first off, if this is the first public hearing on this law, the hearing must be kept open because the law just came out, as far as we know, as far as we've seen it, and the letter from the building inspector about 4 o'clock today. So we haven't had time.
We've had it open, actually. This is, I think, the second.
Okay, then I'll talk faster.
But it's okay.
You don't have to talk fast.
Well, I'm going to try. I think that there's been some recognition here that you're in an acute, and it's not just Long Island, it's the entire country. You're in an acute situation which is out of control, that is a health and safety hazard throughout the country. I think you know that if you make it analogous to something like malaria or something like that comes borne by mosquitoes, like those produced on the Corrigan property by the pools of water, those kind of things are not contained by fences in any way. So the discussion of fences now seems to me to be ill-timed and inadequate. There is no barrier to what, and just to correct something, it's not true that deer that have been caught in residential areas show a minimal amount of ticks. And ticks, according to Stony Brook and the tutorials that they're having everywhere, ticks are the minimal problem. It's the larva where the minuscule microscopic larvae that are produced by also fences do not contain mice, and mice are the carriers of the disease. So if you take the instance of malaria and you decide you're going to treat it with netting, this is analogous to treating it with, aside from all other considerations about fencing and what it looks like and what it does and the inequities, and it's inadequate and it's wrong. If you want to deal with malaria, you have to get to a systemic source and you have to end the pollution. You have to kill the mosquitoes, not kill the mosquitoes. You have to kill the deer. That's it. They have no predators here. They also are known to live. They're not, the idea that we pushed them out, this was their habitat and we pushed them out. Nothing in nature works that way. And the deer are known to live in border areas. They live along the edge, in the median, on the highways. So, and as a matter of fact, as a safety hazard, they're already at 100%. They're as dangerous as they can be. As a disease hazard, they're beyond that. So I think that any discussion of fences is pointless. The discussion has to be controlled, the same as it is with mosquito and any other disease-causing thing, any entity that's allowed to proliferate in nature. So what you need here is a systemic control, and which culling is the very beginning of it, the very beginning of it. But I think that you're going to have to deal with a political universe here that was brought up on Bambi and thinks that these things are adorable in some way. So I would say the thing that I want to suggest is that the public hearing be kept open. I think the idea of talking or experiencing what the culling people have to do, is important. But there's no discussion here. There's no discussion of the deer without a discussion of mosquitoes. They're analogous. So if you want to try to put up fences to control mosquitoes and mice, good luck. This is posthumous legislation. It's from another time and another mindset.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Francis.
Any other comments?
Edward F. Corrigan, member of the Southampton Village Planning Commission. Good evening. So we'd just like to state that the Planning Commission met and discussed this on July 5th, and our chairman submitted a letter, and I'd like to read that letter for the record, so that everyone hears our stance on it. So, dear Mayor, the Commission is in favor of a law regulating deer fencing, noting that in the absence of the law, deer fencing is already being installed in the village. The Commission is in favor of an 8-foot-high deer fencing for back and side yards. The Commission does not have a consensus on front yard fencing. Some members feel that the 6-foot fencing as a deterrent is more appropriate on streets with smaller lots, primarily side and front yards. The Commission notes that fencing, while appropriate, only moves deer from one site to another. We urge the trustees to undertake a study to ascertain the number of deer and pattern of migration and whether culling is appropriate. Finally, the Commission notes that this issue cannot be solved by the village alone and requires cooperation from all of the East End governments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Katerina Grinko of 2 Milton 51 Hill Street, Southampton. As I appeared before this board previously, we continue to represent the board of the Whitefield condominium, and I just wanted to clarify or emphasize where the gentleman was coming from the Whitefield condominium. The concern of the residents is that the controlled hunting or cult will not be enacted again. So, in hopes that at least we wouldn't have to wait until the bigger problem is solved through the enactment of controlled hunting, perhaps the board would consider adopting this proposed local law to help local residents remedy some of the problems caused by the deer. But I understand that the expert will be coming and talking to the community, and I will encourage the board members to attend and hear his thoughts. But I just want to clarify what the concern is today is just that nothing will happen, and then we end up with no solution to the existing problem. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Evelyn.
Good evening. Ellen Conrad, 18 South Roscoe Drive. Congratulations on looking at something beyond fencing. I was at the commission meeting the other day about the fencing, and of course it's putting a Band-Aid on a torn artery. But the only thing I would suggest is, well, obviously you need publicity. Lawsuits get publicity. But the important thing to remember is this is not a village problem. Of course you have to tackle it. It's a Francis Genovese was saying it's a national problem. It is, but there's so many suits against Trump, I don't think we'd get through. But I do think you must consider a way to involve at least the entirety of Long Island, because the problem is acute, and you are taking responsibility. The state is not. Environment and health are two fundamental government responsibilities, and it's wrong to shove them off on the individual citizens or owners. So I'm very happy about the way you're moving and look forward to the Tuesday meeting. Thank you.
I just want to point out that the organization that we met with also handles Remsenburg, I believe it was, and they've been handling Remsenburg for a number of years, and been very successful in reducing the numbers there.
Did he also say he did North Haven?
And Lloyd Harbor.
And Lloyd
North
Harbor,
Haven.
yeah.
And actually, North Haven is interesting because for a long time, North Haven decided they would consider birth control, and it didn't work. So they ended up having to go in and hunt and cull their herds over there, which has helped tremendously. And I spoke to the mayor yesterday from North Haven, and we talked all about it, and he said that was the only thing that worked. So that's what we have to do.
I mean, I honestly think it's a two-prong approach. It's, fencing to control the immediate situation, but it's also controlling the population.
But my concern about fencing to control the immediate is people aren't going to take it down. It's, you put it up, you have your 10-foot fence, you cull the herd and you reduce the amount of deer that we have here, which will continue to multiply, but those people who have put up their fences, they're not taking them down. They're up.
Yep.
So.
Any other comments? Trustees?
I also met with the Hunters for Deer organization, and I think you've captured it well. My concern with the deer fence, even in the short term, is it could create a larger problem for others who do not have it. And residents are coming up to me today, and they're overwhelmed with the number of deer. And they're very concerned about their ability to drive, particularly during the evening hours. And I think we could be creating more harm than good by allowing deer fences in the short term. Having said that, I have great appreciation for the gardens that are at Whitefield or Whitfield. I hear two different pronunciations of that. And I don't know if we could explore landmarking those gardens, because that is a very prominent individual in American history, and maybe have an exception basis for it. I don't know. But it's very concerning to know that we have so many deer, and they're everywhere, and I think it's more dangerous now to think about deer fencing, but of course we want to hear everyone's opinions. So.
Yes, Francis.
Can I just make a suggestion?
You gotta come up
to the, braces again.
Can I make a suggestion that the traveling lectures on the dangers that Stony Brook Hospital is going around presenting, that somehow the board make that available to the public, whether it's, so that there is a clear definition of what the problem is.
Thank you. Any other comments? You know, it's hard to believe that we're discussing deer, and I'll just throw out a sort of funny event that happened to me. I spent a fair amount of time going to Utah, and I'm in Utah, and I'm in a bus, and this guy's taking us for a little bit of a tour, and he stops on the side of the road, and he goes, "Look over there, there's 2 deer." And I looked at my wife, and she just went, "Oh, God." You know, so it's a pretty unusual thing that we have so many deer here. With that said, I'd like to make a motion to keep the deer fence law public hearing open for all purposes until
July 24th.
July 24th.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We have a number of parking hearings here, and I'm going to switch around the Hildreth parking area too. I'm going to bring it up before moving everything in. But with that, I'd like to open the first parking hearing on North Sea Road parking, Tate's Bake Shop.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
In this particular case, there's no time parking on North Sea Road, and Tate's has experienced cars that have been left in front of the store for long periods. So.
Mr. Mayor, what I just passed out to you is 2 things. One is a copy of this section of our vehicle and traffic law, which is all our parking regulations, so you have that in front of you for all the 3 hearings on parking, so you understand what we're amending or adding to the code. And then I gave you a copy of the tax map and the aerial photograph showing you where these parking restrictions would apply. So this proposal is similar to a business nearby, have 2 limited 15-minute parking spaces in front of Tate's Bake Shop.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Down further where the furniture store is now, I think at one point you said...
That's the same restriction in the code.
Are there 15-minute...
Yes.
Because
problem that we're finding
was a liquor store at one point, and
right.
now it's a furniture store, and I would doubt that you could get in and out of that furniture store in 15 minutes. So if we...
That may be the reason why the signs are not out there.
Okay. So...
Though it's in your code.
Yeah.
It's not posted, so I would imagine that's why it's not being enforced.
But my point is, if we have to pick and choose, I would rather put it in front of Tate's than the furniture store. So we might have to make that decision because we have 15 minutes in front of the furniture store, which is a distance away from Tate's, and then Tate's, and I'd rather see it at Tate's. Makes more sense.
I don't think it has to be a choice.
Well, I just wanted to know if it had to be a choice.
No.
Do we have to have a choice?
No.
And do we really need 15 minutes in front of the furniture store?
Charlie may want to...
No, but that could be another amendment if you want to repeal that
Right.
at another time.
There's a photo on the other side.
I think if you had 15 minutes for dates, it's a pretty easy decision because we've done it in many other
Absolutely.
businesses in the village already. So it's already a precedent.
Is there any public comment in regards to parking in front of Tate's? Nope.
Close the hearing.
So, with that, yeah, they gotta eat those cookies fast.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
It's not why I'm here, but my name is Susan Hoptisvin. I live on Post Crossing. Love the local bakeries. Go to the Yale Bake Shop on a regular basis. They have a 15-minute parking spot. It is violated all the time. The owners call the police. and the police just don't have enough time to go there and write the ticket. So I think that Tate's, I know the experience that they had, somebody left their car in front for weeks with an advertisement on it, and that shouldn't be allowed. But the 15-minute spots are vital to the people who own those businesses, but it's also a challenge to enforce them. But I think that they should definitely get those spots. And then it has to get enforced. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you.
A large part of it, too, is you depend upon a good faith system where people see it, and thankfully the majority of them do see it and go, okay, I'm going to get out of here. Yeah. You're right, they're the ones who are violated, but again, the vast majority see the 15-minute sign and actually adhere to it, thankfully, so far.
And the other thing is, don't expect to get in and out of Tate's in 15 minutes at Christmas or Easter. Christmas or Easter or Thanksgiving. It's not happening. So we could be a little lenient then, maybe.
Any others wish to make a comment? Trustees?
Again, I'm all for it, so I'm good.
I saw that car for 10 days.
Yeah.
With no further comments,
Let's put the spots in.
I make a motion to close the hearing on North Sea Road parking, Tate's Bake Shop.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we can vote on this, too, to enact it.
We can do that afterwards.
We'll do all the hearings first. The next one is on Breeze Lane. And so I make a motion to open the parking restrictions on Breeze Lane.
Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
So this parking restrictions came based on complaints. It's consistent with what you've done on other streets throughout the village, particular at intersections. It calls for no parking restrictions at all time within 50 feet of the intersection on Breeze Lane. This is on the west side, within 50 feet of the intersection with Fordham Road, as well as Cooper Street. Has to do with sight distance, particular at Fordham Road. They're both narrow streets. Apparently, there's been some issues that come up, and like I said, you have the current code. You can go through it, and you can see where there's similar restrictions on other intersections throughout the village.
Council, maybe you could let us know on the corner lot, is it 30 feet?
50.
Or is it 50?
50.
50 feet.
These are proposed at 50, yes.
Okay. But the current village law is 20, right?
No.
So there's no restriction to a corner today?
Only on, as you have these restrictions here on per street.
There's not a standard one unless it's been actually designated and signage put up.
There's no state law on parking restriction on a corner? Okay. Then I was misinformed.
Okay. Any comments from the public?
I have a question. I mean, are we, I can see us doing this on Fordham. It's a very little narrow road when it enters into Breeze Lane and Cooper. But then you have Edwards. Isn't that the same scenario?
You can, but these were, you had recent complaints. You can go throughout the village and pull these out. So this is the start. We did ask the police and highway department to sort of give recommendations. This was the first place to start.
I mean, generally...
You are doing it in the next public hearing on one intersection as well.
Historically, Nancy and Mayor, what we've done in the past is like this. It usually gets brought to attention. It's a hot spot because it depends on the traffic pattern and the living pattern, the residence pattern in any particular neighborhood. So when it becomes an issue, it gets brought to us, and we implement it on pretty much as a need or request basis. So that's why just these come up and other ones in the past.
I think one of the issues is that there's a couple of properties, those first two properties in Fordham that are small lots with no parking.
Yes.
So everybody's parking out on Breeze Lane is where the issue is.
And we do see it from the aerial photo.
Well, you can see from the aerial that the
right
house on the southwest or the southwest corner of Fordham Road has a garage and a driveway that is on Fordham Road. And then on the northwest corner of Fordham and Breeze, they have a driveway on Breeze Lane. And it looks like 2 cars can be parked side by side there. It's wide enough, the driveway's wide enough that they could do that. The next corner, it isn't wide enough, but they do have parking there. As you go down the driveway, there's parking there.
Right.
So that they would be able to. I think what happens a lot in the village, and this is kind of what we're suffering from, especially on the smaller lots, they're narrow driveways because the lots are not that wide, and so they're single file, and I think a lot of people figure, hey, we're here for a weekend, and we'll pull one car in, but let's park the other one on the street because it's a pain in the neck to pull the car out, to let the other car in, then we pull in, then they want to get in. It's just jockeying cars all weekend, so they decide we're going to pull on the street, and we're seeing it all over the village. I have it in my neighborhood, too, and I see it, and I've had discussions with people about it, and they want to park on the street in front of their house. So we're going to probably see more of it, and, you know, I think, you know, unless they widen their driveways and create parking areas on their property, and not everybody can do it, so it's a problem.
Clearly on the Fordham Road side, you can see all those homes have those single-file driveways.
Yeah.
So when my teenage son comes home at 2 in the morning, and if I live at this house, do you think he's going to get up at 7 when I'm leaving? No.
Right.
So that's the problem. Everyone's
Right.
going to park there. And that's what created the problem for Breeze, because I spoke to a few residents there. They had indicated a number of people are renting those homes, and those renters are also parking on the street.
Right.
However, the concern that they're also mentioning to me is sometimes they have guests or visitors, and they don't want a giant, you know, no parking sign in front of their own home, for which they're not at fault, that's their home, and they have enough cars, parking spaces, but they're objecting to having a parking sign there, which I fully understand.
I mean, I don't know if we've actually had conversation with these houses at the corner of Fordham and Breeze, because obviously the one on the southwest corner, there's cars parked on the street there now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're related to that house, or if they're just from another across the street or around the corner. I don't know, but there's cars there. And now, for the first 50 feet, they can't park there. So,
whereas that's their, you know, I don't know how you could say it, it's their front yard, but...
It is their front yard.
I'm not so certain...
From a safety point of view, I fully get it, and I have concern over it, but I also have concern over people's rights to...
Well, in this case, Nancy, I think you're trying to protect the corners.
I hear
Yeah, that's right. And they're still allowed to park in front of their house. There's just less of it, unfortunately. You know, I mean, you have to put it in somewhere, unfortunately.
But a 50, you know. So here's my question, and I was completely misinformed, and Counselor, obviously you know better than I do, but I was told that we have a restriction today of several feet, of 20 feet or 30 feet.
Not in your code.
It's not in our code, okay. But that would present a problem unilaterally across the village, because everyone would then park on a corner.
And the enforceability without signage, you have a problem.
But you'll find, if you go around, you'll see that there is signage in a lot of busy intersections stating no parking from here. And it may be that 20, 30, range. Because the thing, there are many intersections where you see a lot of cars parked right to the intersection. So, and if you look, there's signage, like around the house, but there's many spots where there is that.
I think there's a lot more traffic coming from some of the other streets than there might be Fordham, though.
Well, not Fordham, but the fact that you have a couple, you have curb cuts and roads that this is a particular scenario where what feeds right into it. That's why this was addressed by certain people and certain neighbors.
So one of the residents expressed concern about having a large number of no parking signs I don't know if we want to go and speak to a couple more, or how you
In
feel.
this area?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I.
Well, it's a public hearing, they can come and talk about it. I mean, that's what this is about. So
Maybe we allow it one more session and see if they'll come and talk about it.
Okay, if you like.
If you're okay with that.
I think that certainly the highway department
Well, no, we haven't opened up the public.
can walk up to the house and ask them where they'd
Okay.
like the sign. I think that's,
This instance, you have to put the sign at the 50 feet, no parking from this
Right.
point to, and it's one sign.
yeah.
Not, as Rich said, you're not prohibiting parking anywhere else, only in proximity to the intersection.
Well, in that case, you could put the sign out by the corner, where's now is.
Did I hear that right? I thought you said it had to be at the 50-foot mark, or does it matter?
You normally, the way the signage says is no
50
parking
foot
from
from
this
here
point
to
to the
corner.
corner.
Yeah.
So you put it,
So it'd be the other way.
and again, the affected properties are not having their entire piece of property affected, a portion of it. I mean, as usual with this, we've had this discussion, I've told you many a times. I say all the time, half the room is going to be for this, half isn't. So we've had people come up asking for this, and there's going to be neighbors who don't want that restrictions. I don't know. We're here to make the decision, which way you want to go with it, knowing full well that not everybody's going to want to.
I think we need to leave this open for another session and reach out to these people.
And if no one.
Is anybody here
comes
tonight from
forward,
Breeze Lane? Because it's a negative? Okay. Or Fordham, anybody here about this? Okay. All right, well, nobody's here to talk.
Any other comments on the Breeze Lane parking?
Nobody's here to discuss it, don't keep it open.
Then I'll make a motion to leave the parking restriction on Breeze Lane open to the next session in July 24th.
Second.
Aye.
And then I'm going to go to the parking restrictions on the Hildreth Street and Jennings Avenue, so I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the parking restrictions on the Hildreth Street and Jennings Avenue.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Before you comment, I want to make sure that everybody also understands, because you did receive some written comments. So if you look on page 5 of your current code, with respect to in particular Layton Avenue, because this amendment affects a portion of Layton Avenue, you need to know what the current restrictions are on Layton Avenue. And so on the north side of Layton Avenue, from North Main Street east to Elm Street, currently there's no parking from 12 midnight to 6 a.m. Question may be is whether the signage is up. On Layton Avenue South, from Hill Street to Elm Street, there's no parking 12 midnight to 6 a.m.
You mean from North Main to Elm?
No,
You said
from
Hill?
Hildreth Street
Oh, I thought
to
you said
Elm
Hill.
Street.
You said Hill.
Hildreth Street, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
To Elm Street, no parking from 12 to 6 a.m.
Can you say that one more time?
Hildreth Street
Yep.
east to Elm Street, no parking
parking.
12 a.m. to 6, and that's on the south side.
South side.
From Hildreth Street to North Main Street, there's no parking at all times.
From Hildreth
So that's the
Street.
current regulations on Layton. On Hildreth and Jennings, there are no restrictions currently in place.
At all, for
At
anyone.
all. So this proposal would be on both the north or east and west, north and south, depending on which side, on both Jennings and Hildreth, no parking from 12 a.m. to 6. And then there's also a portion similar to the last proposal on the north side of Layton, no parking at all times within 50 feet of the intersection of North Main Street.
And that's really a safety measure, too.
Also, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the proposal in front of you.
So I've had a number of phone calls from different people, and I'm going to express their concern when they called me. I've had phone calls from people in the Leighton House condos. I'm going to start there first, because when the Leighton House condos were developed, there's 30 condos in there, and there's 20 parking spots in the parking lot. So there's not enough parking, because even at that, some people have 2 cars. I think these condos were originally made for thinking that it would be a second place, home for people, and now it isn't. Now there are people living in there year-round. So a lot of these families have 2 cars. So clearly we do not have enough parking for the Leighton condos. So they're being forced to the street. And I've talked to people on Leighton Avenue, and people on Leighton Avenue are saying the problem with it, and everybody's very good about it, but the problem with it is that because it's on the north side of Leighton Avenue, people are trying to squeeze in, and in some cases they're covering driveways and people are having difficulty getting out. And that's the hardship of all of that. That there's not enough parking for Leighton, and that is being forced to go onto Leighton Avenue, and it's covering some people's driveways. So someone said to me, we were talking about it, like if we switched the parking from the north side of Leighton and put it on the south side and designated and created parking spaces in front of the Leighton with stripes. And the only reason why stripes came up for there was because people would more than likely park within the stripes. If you didn't have stripes, they're just going to park any old place. So they might park, and you could, in a spot where you could have gotten 2 cars, and they might be taking up 1.5 spaces. So the stripes were mentioned, which I thought was probably a good idea for there, because it's specifically for them. We're not going to market that it's only for them, but that wouldn't be an accommodation. And then they asked, and then this is a problem with the 50 feet, they asked if we came around the corner onto Hildreth and created some spaces from the corner, which we really can't do now because it's a corner, a couple of spaces there before you go into the parking lot. But I'm seeing that we really can't do that.
Well, they parked there already.
Well,
Since there was no restrictions, Since there are no restrictions, people do park
so
on the corner of Hildreth.
we have to come up with something for this, because we can't leave this the way it is.
Well,
And
I think this is
and
a
the
whole
only-
different issue.
yeah.
This isn't what is in front of us tonight.
No, it isn't, but I'm bringing it up because a lot of people who live on, who are on Hill, a lot of people who are on Leighton feel that if we do this on Jennings and Hildreth, it's going to push more people to Leighton. That's the bottom line. So that's their concern. And I mean, I know, John, you came and talked about this, and this is how this all came about. But my question is, do you feel that these are neighborhood people who park on these streets, and they're just parking there because their driveways don't hold the cars?
You're addressing it to me.
Yes, because you came, yes.
Can I talk?
I would like you to come up.
I probably am uniquely aware from a personal historical point of view of Hildreth and Jennings, because with the exception of the 10 years I lived in New York and Pennsylvania, I've lived on that street of 50 of my 62 years, not in the house that I grew up in, but
right.
The house down the street, and then in the house that I grew up in. And I will tell you that with the exception of my house, which was built 23 years ago, and which is, you never see a car from my house on the street because we have a garage, and then we have the appropriate amount of parking for any overflow. So there's quite literally never a car from my street, from my house on the street. But that's with the exception of the house that Ed Coral built that's now owned by the Pfeiffers about 52 years ago. There's been no new construction on that street. And I will also tell you that there was never any parking on the street. Never any parking on Leighton, never any parking on Jennings. So what's the cause of this? What's the cause of this? I'll tell you. People don't want to move their cars.
That's what it is.
And that's too bad. Because you know something? I talked to my 29-year-old son the other day at 6:45 in the morning, and he was driving around in Manhattan after having gotten out of work at his restaurant that he owns with his brother at 3:30 in the morning, but he got his butt up to make sure that he, on the alternate side of the street parking, he didn't get a ticket. That's what you do. That's your choice. So what has happened is that people don't want to move when they have this single things. They also don't want to take advantage of the parking regulations that allow them, if they choose to have this number of cars in their, own that number of cars, they can park with a 10 feet setback as long as it's adequately buffered in their front yard. But also, many of them have taken the existing garages at the house and converted them into pool houses, converted them into other things. These houses were made with garages at the end of the driveway, okay? And they, not only have they converted them, but they don't, God forbid that the pavement go all the way back to the garage. So what they've done is they've grassed up the area from the garage, half of which are now been converted, some of which of dubious legality, and put a fence halfway up the driveway. So this is a problem with a remedy, and the remedy is that they have to live according to the zoning law, and they have to live in a manner where these houses were constructed, because it is absolutely become an untenable situation. I'm a co-owner of 60 Cobra Street, and my wife Carol owns 61 Jennings. In addition to the letters of support that I've given you, I've also spoken recently to Suzanne Davis and John Davis, who live at 78 Hildreth. They've asked me to share with you their support for the amendment, and Jameson Weiner at 54 Jennings, who's also asked me to share his support of the application. It is quite literally descends into a one-lane road. And if I had my druthers, I would say no parking on the street, period. Because people should, every one of those houses, lots on the street, has the ability to get those cars off the street, both on Jennings and on Hildreth. If I had my druthers, there would be no parking at all. But I'd like to start with no parking. You have the sight distance. When I'm driving north on Hildreth, get out to Layton, I can't think of a worse idea than putting allowing spaces in front of the apartments on Hildreth. Because when you're driving down north on Hildreth, I can't tell you how many times that I've had a car making the left that's heading west on Layton. There's no place for them to go because there are people parked on either side, even if they're parked on one side, so they're actually coming into my lane when they make the left onto Hildreth. And it's an absolutely untenable situation. And it is a problem with a remedy. People have to go back and they have to say, okay, well, maybe I've got to convert this garage that I sometimes, maybe in a dubious way, converted into something else, back into a garage. Maybe I have to take up the fencing that I put halfway down because I'd rather have either grass or those pavers on the driveway. I grew up on that street. No one parked on the street. And I think to a certain degree, Nancy, it's a cultural thing.
It is definitely.
But you know something? That's really too bad, because sometimes, you know, if one of us forgets and parks on the side of the house at the night so we can't get to where the garage is, one of us has to get up earlier and move the car. And you know something? That's part of being a good citizen. That's part of making this retain its semi-rural character, as opposed to, I mean, I lived in Brooklyn. People just parked on the street because there's no other place to park, but that's not what you have to do. It's a safety issue. It's an aesthetic issue. You've got letters of support. I'm sure some people will be in opposition to it, but you have quite a number of letters of support of the proposed law and my recent additions to that. So I would ask you to pass it and pass it tonight. Oh, one last thing I did want to add. I did see that the 50-foot restriction on Layton, 50 feet from the intersection. I don't know if you can pick this up, but there has been a white van that parks at the end, at the intersection of Layton and North Main. Talk about another situation where you have no sight vision, and people have to come around and get in the eastbound lane of Layton. So that's...
And it's usually fairly far.
Why would I try to hold the scope of the camera? It's one reason why I would
Just face it towards no.
What am I facing towards?
Towards that camera behind me.
I've heard and I've seen the van, yes. I've heard about it and seen it. So.
It's the famous van. I've actually knocked on it and seen for the owner and everything. And then, for whatever it's worth, my understanding was under the state law you weren't supposed to park within a certain distance.
Yeah, mine too. I thought it was...
But
the question is, who can enforce it?
Who can enforce it? Oh,
it was not in our code. So.
Yeah, it's not in our code. It's not something they can write a parking ticket under the village code.
It would be a violation of the vehicle and traffic
Vehicle traffic state, yeah. Question posted.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So I went around that area and I was joined by Officer Perez, and I called some of our first responders, and I asked them what they experience when they go down those streets, and very much what you said, John. They can't turn and plow, they can't turn a fire truck, it's usually single lane. It's a very congested area, is that correct?
Or it becomes a slalom.
Right. But when I walked behind the Layton facility where several of my friends live, I noticed, even in varying parts of the day, no cars parked back there. There were 3 cars there and a bouncy ball and a little kiddie bike. I didn't see anyone back there.
There's a lot of vacancies back there.
So I don't know, and I didn't see very good parking lines, but I counted about 25 spots.
That's where they all parked when I was a kid.
Do they charge
It's
extra
20
for it?
only? Okay.
Do they charge
So
extra for it? So maybe
They charge extra for it.
Okay,
But
so
I
that's why.
would love to hear from the folks who live there, what's with the back? Why does no one, is it true that people don't?
Because they have to walk around. There's no back entrance to the building.
One person at a time at the podium?
And state Jessica D. Same Layton address. 26 Layton Avenue, number 14. And I wasn't here 50 years ago when they built the condos, but maybe someone here was. And how did they allow the parking behind a unit that were 30 to be only 20? I don't know. So, but now that I live there, I have to, you know, that's my parking lot, that's where I park. As far as the other residents, I'm sure that many of them maybe have 2 cars, maybe they have 3 cars. I don't know. I have 1 car and I park it in the back. But I do notice that on the street, Hildreth Street, people do tend to park there during the day, along with like landscape crews and different workers, and those trucks are large and they do make it really difficult to drive down those streets. During the day, I don't think they're there at night. You know, I don't walk, drive down the street very late at night, so I don't know who's there all day. But at nighttime, what I have seen before is across from where your house is, there is a house that tends to have people there on the weekends. And I think you even have a picture that had the white car that has the Connecticut license plates. That's there a lot. So they must have overnight guests that come and stay. And that's what on your street. But I don't know as far as on Layton Avenue, it's pretty much always the same cars. And there would be a hardship from the people living there if there were not some spaces on either Layton Avenue or Hildreth Street that was assigned to the people that lived at Layton House.
If I could just ask you a question. In the evenings, is that parking lot full?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Not always, but if all the people were in residence, then it would be.
Are they assigned spots back there, or is it first come, first serve?
It's first come, first serve.
I'd like to make a comment about that.
Please come to the front.
Yeah, I'm done.
And
That is that.
If you could just state your...
Oh, okay. And they'll be right. And I'm a resident of 26 Layton Avenue. So as we've established, there are 20 spaces in the back, and people do not always park in the parking lot. It's been full recently, but it isn't always full. And one of the reasons for that is that if you live near the end of the units, then running around to the back is very convenient for you. If you live right opposite the house across the street from Layton Condo, it's more convenient for you to park and run into your unit. So as long as it's allowed, there will be people parking there. And furthermore, there just isn't enough parking. The spaces immediately across the street from Layton Condo, by and large, are parked in only by residents and construction vehicles who are working endlessly on the house across the street. And the 4 spaces at Hildreth Street are parked overnight by people who live at Layton. Not having those spaces would be a hardship. And we argue that those spaces aren't in anyone's front yard. They're in our yard. They're not bothering anyone. If we had to move those 4 spaces, they would start parking on Layton Avenue in front of the Flynn's house and in front of more houses, and those people would probably not be happy about it. So I don't know how much has been said before, but one of the things we thought would be good for starters would be painting parking spots. Because if we do not park efficiently, we lose a couple of parking spaces. And it's kind of hard to estimate, for various reasons, where you're actually parking. So the other thought that someone had, and I think it was Alice, was if the parking could be moved to the other side of the street. Now, I don't know, maybe there's a reason it can't be moved, but if it could be moved, we would gain a couple of parking spaces there because we wouldn't have all those driveways cutting in. Whether that can happen, I don't know. The other thing is, even though our across-the-street neighbors would still have to put up with parking, it wouldn't be right in front of their house. I mean, granted, they couldn't park there, but at least they wouldn't have us blocking their driveways or, going a little bit too far. No one really intends to block anybody, but occasionally it does happen. So anyway.
Can I just ask one thing? Because you mentioned it was first come, first serve, but
Yeah.
but is there additional charge for parking in the
No.
rear?
No, anyone can park in the rear. In the winter, we all race out to the rear because it's going to be plowed and because we don't want to be in the snowplow's way. By and large, in the summer, whoever lives at the ends, they park on the, they either park in the rear because it's a short jog, or, they park across the street and run across the street to their house. Unfortunately, Layton does not have rear entrances of any kind. So, you're just kind of faced with that situation here. We have 30 units with possibly up to 60 people and 20 spaces.
No, you're right, ill-conceived from the beginning, but nonetheless.
It was ill-conceived, but it got passed.
But that's been a discussion with, and Trustee McGann brought up, and I've had the same discussions with people on Layton, that it's ironic where the parking is in front of the houses. And if you look at the map here that the counselor has, how many, on this north side of Layton, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses. So 5 or 6 curb cuts that are affected, where you only have 2 houses in addition to the condos that would be impacted. So
get a lot more.
So you get more. The argument would be to have parking right in front of the unit itself on the south side, and have a stripe.
Switch the parking to the south side.
It would also be a little bit safer because, some people aren't too swift. People zoom down Layton Avenue and you have to cross them. So now there are utility poles there. So is that a problem? I would hope not, because it would be a partial solution to get more spaces and to.
But you're right, the spaces have to be somewhere, because, again, there's 30 units and there's 20 spots. So we can't say there's no parking allowed, I don't think, because you got to go somewhere.
Well, yeah, it would be a disaster not to have parking allowed there. But I think equally, whether you close off parking on the rest of Hildreth or Jennings, it would be a disaster to get rid of those 4 spaces that people actually use, Layton people, every single night on Hildreth Street. Layton Condo owners
Right from the
park in
corner
those 4 spaces.
to the parking spot, yeah, to the parking lot.
Having lines would help, because if they don't park smartly, we get 3 cars. If we park smartly, we get 4. And by the same token, on Layton Avenue, it's the same thing. Maureen Flanagan and I wrote a letter that, we can submit to you. Should we do that?
Sure.
All right, we don't have to read it, but we can hand it in. Okay. So I'll give it to you.
Yep.
And it has more signatures as well? You want me to read it?
Why don't you read it?
So, to the Southampton Village Board. This was written a little while ago before I had a couple of subsequent conversations that were very helpful. We are writing to express our disappointment to learn of a proposed ban on parking on both Hildreth Street and Jennings Avenue between 12 and 6 a.m. We are uncertain about exactly what this proposed ordinance would accomplish, as there is not a high volume of traffic on either street that would be impeded by legally parked cars overnight. If this is not the reason for the proposed ban, we would like to know what it is. Layton Avenue, in fact, has much more traffic than Hildreth Street or Jennings Avenue have during those hours. And because Layton House condominium residents currently park overnight on Hildreth Street and would have to find parking elsewhere, the proposed ban would increase the number of cars parked on Layton Avenue, which we have learned would be a most unwelcome development for Layton Avenue residents. Parking spaces currently used by Layton condo owners on the west side of Hildreth Street, near the corner of Layton Avenue, impact only the residents of Layton House. It's our side yard, and we're not depriving any private homes of parking spaces. Ideally, our neighborhood homes would have the long driveways with ample parking enjoyed in some other neighborhoods. They don't, however, and not every modest driveway can accommodate owners or renters and their overnight guests. In our view, the current proposal not only addresses a non-existent problem, but would potentially create a worse outcome. And then some signatures here. Can I give it to you?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so there we go.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Wright, I don't know who the owners are of Layton, but when our planning commission worked with several parking experts, they identified that diagonal parking actually increases the number of spots. Right. And maybe the back of Layton
no,
would be...
No, you are having the same idea as, actually it was my son, because we were out in the parking lot thinking, how can we get more cars parked here? And his suggestion was try diagonal. Now, we've talked about that, and we have to get a parking person, maybe Mr. Delalio, who's going to resurface our back, to take a look and see if it actually is feasible. There may or may not be room, but if there were and we could provide a turnaround space, we could fit. The other thing we are going to do is, that dumpster that's back there?
I saw that.
It's way too big. I talked to the sanitation guy. He said it can be half the size. We're going to shove it down one length to the left. We'll gain a couple of spaces there. So we really are trying to... and the other thing I think is reasonable is, I think we should, as a community, try to be considerate of the people who live around us, because who wants people parked in their front yards? No one. I've noticed that sometimes one of our owners parks in front of the one property to the west of us. And I believe this happens occasionally, and all good intentions, but it's legal to park there. But I think we would try to be cooperative if we, were to get a solution here. We would really try to, of course, we still are going to have to park on Layton, but I think we could be a little bit more considerate on Hildreth. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
No.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Good evening. My name is Mary Crow. I live at 26 Layton Avenue, apartment 7. I have been, matter of fact, I was there 50 years ago when the building was built in 1968 by Larry and Goliath. At that time, I guess things were a lot easier to get approval, and we were approved for a 30-unit, 20 parking space building. In 1983, it was turned into a condominium, at which time I bought my unit, so I'm an owner of 35 years. Things were a lot simpler there. It was never designated to be an over 55 building at any time by any one of the municipalities. We do have a senior contingent that lived there, but if we fast forward to 2018, we have young families with young children, we have working couples with 2 cars, and we have single individuals with trucks, some of which are oversized, and we have 20 parking spaces. We're doing the best we can as a community to accommodate our own residents, but there's just no space. We have on the Hildreth side, that's what it's under discussion tonight, is abandoning parking on Hildreth Street. There are 2 entrances to Leighton House, which affects 12 units of people. They go in and out, so they are living on Hildreth Street. That's their address. There are perhaps 4, maybe 5 people who, out of necessity, because there's nothing left on Leighton Avenue to park, no place, have to use Hildreth Street. We are already burdened with a sign that says no parking here to corner, and the multiple restrictions, some of which I'm not aware or haven't been made aware of, that affect Leighton Street are quite a lot for one street. It's used as a speedway in some instances from Elm Street to North Main Street, with the traffic speeding all the time, back and forth. That's not what we're here to resolve tonight. The fact that we have to have parking on Hildreth Street to accommodate some of our residences is the problem. There's no place to go, simply no place to go. There's restrictions on Elm Street. There's restrictions on Church Street, where Our Lady of Poland is. There's restrictions all around us, many of which affect Leighton Avenue. To put this burden on us on top of everything else, I think is extremely unreasonable. Are there any questions you may have for me? That's really the crux of the problem here. We just have no place to go. There are exactly 20 parking spaces for safety reasons, I think, if nothing else, and we really can't accommodate maybe 2 more. What we do need on Leighton Avenue is diagonal parking.
Leighton Avenue?
On Leighton Street. There, Leighton Avenue.
You mean that?
What we need on Leighton Avenue to help us a little further accommodate, because there are people that will take up more room than necessary to park. There are trucks especially that take up a great deal of room. And if we do the diagonal parking, I don't care which side of the street it's on, we may pick up 1 or 2 more spaces, but that doesn't solve the overall problem.
I think she was saying diagonal parking in the parking lot, I believe, right?
She wasn't talking
not on
about,
the street,
when
not on Leighton
Penny was
Avenue
talking,
itself.
she was talking about diagonal in the parking lot. I don't know, we would have to see whether or not the road is wide enough to do that.
It's not a wide road.
No, it's not. It would have to turn into a one-way street.
It's not a wide road. The parking that's available now on Leighton, some of us, including me, stop on the opposite side when I take my groceries out of the car to get in and out, because I park in the back regularly. And there's a lot of kind neighbors who leave one particular spot available for me. I'm here all year round, so I need, and I walk around the building. There's just no room on Leighton Avenue, and this is an impossible burden, additional burden that's placed on us, and I don't know how to resolve it. I don't know where we go from here, if we go to another board or department to see if we can solve the parking situation on Leighton, or whether you people oversee something like that. I don't know. It's up to you to decide, I guess.
You're at the right board.
But that's all I have to say at the moment.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Your comment. Sir, go ahead.
Yes.
That's sir.
Oh, by the way, there are many, many people here representing Jennings, Hildreth, and Layton who feel support by Where's one of them?
Hello, my name is Dennis Warcola. I live at 37 Jennings Avenue, and I can understand. I walk since I've heard about all this going on. I've made a point of walking my daughter's dog late at night, multiple times, and I've seen no instances of any trouble at all at night with a ton of cars. I have seen cars. One night I saw 6 cars, and that included Jennings and Hildreth. And I noticed down at the very end of Jennings by North Main Street, there was more cars than I've ever seen there. And the reason was the guy had just paved his property there in a driveway, which was going to take at least 5 or 6 cars off the street. That's why they weren't there. You can't pull a car in there on wet, fresh blacktop. So I haven't seen any instances. I'm speaking Jennings Avenue now. We don't have an issue. Not all of us have long driveways with turnarounds. My little driveway is 14 foot wide. I don't have a garage. I never did have a garage. I didn't convert anything into a pool house. I don't have a pool. So some of us on that end, I consider it more of like a little working class end of town. A lot of my neighbors, we got lucky. My folks bought a house in 1977 for $44,000. I inherited it. I figured I hit my lottery. I know it. But my philosophy is live and let live. I have no issue. I was a fireman in the city for 28 years. These gentlemen here, I understand responses and getting around corners and everything. I understand it very well. Downtown, that end of town, Jennings Avenue, I don't see any problem with the parking. People can park in front, you can park in front of my house. I feel for the people who really between a rock and a hard place. The people in the condo, where the hell are they gonna go? So I don't see any problem on Jennings Avenue at all. Around the corner a little bit, sure. But some of the hedges are very high. You got more of a chance walking your dog, somebody backing out of their house with their high hedges. That's more dangerous.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Peter Sacropani. I live at 59 Hildreth. I haven't lived there for 50 years, and I know when someone like John Bennett comes before you, he's got a lot of gravitas. He's a great lawyer. In fact, he's my lawyer. But I couldn't disagree with him more on this point. I live in my house 75 days a year. This is a beautiful village. It has beautiful beaches. I come for one reason. My 2 children and my grandchildren and their spouses come. If you pass this law, I can't fit all the cars in my driveway. I think the picture, and I'd like to see the picture Mr. Bennett used. I don't know if it's in the record, but maybe John would allow me to have it. So I look at it, I can tell you one of these cars belongs to me or my family. That one right there. That's because that was probably done either over the 4th of July when I did have the family or a weekend. For the 75 days my wife and I are here, my children are here, perhaps every other weekend. So this to me is personal. All politics are local, all politics are personal. If you pass this, I cannot park in front of my home. This is a home that I didn't inherit, that I paid a fair amount of money for because this community is changing, and I think you all would support that. The values are going up because this is a terrific place to live. My grandchildren like to ride their bikes around the corner. It's a fabulous place. But the values are going up. I bought it for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's that we could come out and enjoy the beaches and the village and have dinner and be a family together.
You passed this law, I can't park in front of my house. I would argue with you that you inversely have taken my property. You've devalued my property and everyone else's property here that you've done that to. And I know you don't want to do that, and I know, Trustee Allen, you asked the question, you can't park in front of your own house? That's not good. If there's an issue, and by the way, I don't know about plows. I'm never here in the winter, although the person that washes the house tells me they do plow my driveway. But if it is an issue, you have a reasonable alternative. Restrict the parking to one side of the street on Hildreth. That's all. It's done. It's over. Then you don't have one lane. You have parking on one side of the street. I don't care what side it is. I just want to be able to have guests and my family come to my house and enjoy my house. And I think I speak for a lot of people in this room when I say that. You have a whole other issue, and those are the condos. Those poor people have to park their cars. That is of necessity. That's like an easement, a prescriptive easement. I can't speak for them, but they have to park somewhere. And when we have guests overnight, they have to park somewhere. So if you're going to enact this, which I hope you will not, then let's be reasonable about it. Let's not be capricious. Let's do it on one side of the street so that at least people can have guests park overnight. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Do you have a question for me? No? Okay. I submitted a letter that's under my name that I would ask to be part of the record.
Thank you, sir. Well, John, before you speak, there's a couple of people who haven't spoken. Maybe we could...
Hi, I'm Heidi Brown. I live at 36 Jennings Avenue. I happen to be one of those people who has a not dubious pool house. It's completely legal. I bought the house with what I assume was a garage at one time. It's an old house. I don't really know, but it's been a studio and then a pool house, a studio basically, for a really long time. We have one car. We have a driveway that's 8 feet wide. We use it. We don't park in the street. But occasionally we do have overnight guests, and I'm not particularly lazy. I'm a retired stagehand, Broadway stagehand of 38 years, and worked 6 and 7 days a week and 16 hours a day. But I don't want to jockey cars around at 6 in the morning. And I'm not sure exactly that I understand why 12 to 6. What does that change? We don't have a lot of people parking there. It's everybody, you know, it's all local people who occasionally have guests. Dennis, who already spoke, has children who come out, and he doesn't have much of a driveway either, so they have to park on the street. You know, we're not bad people. We just don't want to jockey cars around. It doesn't seem like a big deal. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maureen Scanlon. I live at 82 Hildreth Street. It's a two-family home, and I'm guilty of a truck being just left on the street. My son is living with me, and he's been in Maine getting his house ready for sale, so it's just been sitting there. So I wasn't aware of all of this commotion about parking on Hildreth Street. So now that I'm aware of it, then I can do my share in making sure that that the truck is moved or goes into the driveway, and during the winter time, make sure that my cars that we park on Layton Avenue are into the driveway, because the tenants below have the use of the driveway, and there were 3 tenants in there before. So I just want to say, now that I understand about the parking on Hildreth Street, that I'll do my share in, you know, keeping my cars off the road when necessary.
So you are on Hildreth, is that correct?
Hildreth.
Hildreth and near Jennings?
Yes.
So do you park on Hildreth?
We park on Hill Drive.
Yeah, because you don't have a choice. You can't park in the parking lot because the tenants downstairs take
in the driveway because the tenants downstairs,
yeah.
Because the tenants down below do. But we do have an extra car there. We have that truck that's just been sitting there. So I'll take care of that and get that off the street. But and you know, I think I can when the snow plows come, you know, work with the tenants downstairs and put our cars in the driveway. So, but like I said, I wasn't aware of this parking commotion. So now that I am, I'll do my share and make sure that the cars are off the street when necessary. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others with a comment? John?
I draw terribly, so excuse me. Peter's a client, maybe an erstwhile client. But my primary concern...
John, speak louder.
I said Peter's a client, maybe my erstwhile client, but my primary concern is my home and where my family lives. When Betty Corwin owned the house across the street that Peter and his wife live in now, they don't... When Betty, I want to be able to demonstrate. I don't know where I can show this on the...
Put that on...
Okay. If I put it on the podium, can Charlie pick it up?
Let me just say, we're going to have
interrupt.
We're going to have an evidentiary hearing and start putting stuff into evidence. Keep the record open. I'll be back at the next meeting.
Please.
And then you speak up.
Okay. Well, I know I have to demonstrate. Okay.
Well, you can pull the mic out of the...
All right. Probably broke.
How you broke?
There you go.
Well, there you go.
So when Betty Corwin owned this house, before it was renovated, there were two spaces. There was a driveway that came into the garage. No, there was no garage. There was a parking area in the back, which now has a garage there, and there were two spaces to the right side, or I guess that's the north side of the driveway. So even though Betty Corwin had borders there, I had known her all my life, and even though she'd essentially made a 2 or 3 family house, I, for whatever reason, decided not to do anything. But there were always 4 cars there, but they were always kept on site because there was a bump out, which was legal because it's 10 feet and 10 feet. So there was parking in the front, and then there's parking back here. There is now a garage back there that's not in use as a garage. So quite candidly, Peter, if you had left the parking situation the way it was, and if were utilizing the garage as a garage, you could more than handily fit the cars there. On the Ms. Scanlon's piece, that's owned by a gentleman by the name of Shape. He's taken the garage and he's turned it into, I think his wife is an artist of some sort. He's taken a 2-car garage and turned it into something other than a garage. So that takes away 2 of the cars. And then he tells, from what I understand, the tenants downstairs, I guess they're the superior tenants in some strange fashion, they have the use of the driveway, but the other tenants can't. So again, this is a situation where people have created their own problems. Now, could you bring up the aerial showing Layton and the intersection of Layton and Hildreth? You had it up before.
Right.
Oh, I just used it right.
No, I just moved it.
Okay, thank you. So, just let me orient myself. When people park on the, I guess this is the west side of Layton.
Of Layton? No, of Hildreth.
On Hildreth, I'm sorry. When people park on the west side of Hildreth, you change Hildreth into a 1-lane street because Hildreth is not anywhere near. I mean, the right-of-way, I'm sure, as all village right-of-ways, is 50 feet, but the paved portion is nowhere near even the size of Layton, which again is a bit of an enforcement problem because people are coming up that street doing 45 miles an hour sometimes. It's outrageous. But in any event, when people are coming off of Layton onto Hildreth, and people do quite often use Layton because they are trying to get around traffic, and they're there all the time, people coming down. When they come,
people use Hildreth.
Hildreth, sorry.
You said
when people use Hildreth, if the cars are parked anywhere in this area, you simply have the Hildreth is choked down to a one-lane space, and then you have people parking on both sides, and you literally, I've had people when I've been closer to the intersection than other people who have started to make the left on of Layton. People who know me know it's hard for me to back off in a situation like that. I've actually had them back down into Layton so that I could pass. So it's an absolutely untenable situation there.
Well, maybe we should do one-way streets there.
Excuse me?
Maybe we should do one-way.
On Layton?
No.
One way or one side of the street?
One way. It came up before you had mentioned it, Rich. Well, maybe we should do a one-way situation there.
No, I didn't say that. No, I said if you could only do, no, that was about something else.
Oh.
No, I would never say one way.
One way. That's, John, would you like that?
I'm okay with that.
It's a thought.
I don't know about one way, because you really,
Jennings and Hildreth would be a one-way maybe.
I think a compromise, one suggestion was having parking on one side of the street, I think is what somebody said, not one-way street direction.
So in any event, when you get into this situation, the story, the part of the story that you're not being told is that there are methods to solve this problem. And you know what? I'm really sorry. If you got to get up and move your car, that's really too bad.
But what if you don't have enough space, like the man?
Well, this area could be looked at and restriped, and I'm sure you could get more cars in there.
But would you agree, at the very least, Layton Avenue here, that the condos pose a very unique situation?
No, I don't. I think people.
You're saying that they should.
No, I don't. I think again, for until about 10 years ago, this was not an issue at all.
Yeah, but things changed, John. People live there year-round now. People are living in those condos year-round. It wasn't always that. No, they haven't. Sorry, I know that those were rental units for a very long time, and now they're not. Now people are living there year-round, and if they're living there year-round and they have two cars, we have more of a problem.
Now, what happens is people don't want to have to walk around. I understand there's no exits on the south side of the Layton Avenue condominiums. That means it's inconvenient for them. But again,
that's not the point. It is inconvenient. It's inconvenient for a lot of people to walk around and go to the center. It's easier for them to park here. But the fact of the matter is the parking lot's full and there's not enough room.
That's not, no, rarely.
Maybe during the day it's not, but because everybody's out working.
Or at night. Rarely, no, they park, they don't use the parking lot because it's not convenient for them, period. And I'm the one who sees it every day when I go past there. I'm telling you, these are problems with remedies that people have to use their properties as they're supposed to, in accordance with the zoning laws, in accordance with the way they've been designed. And they have now,
people in the audience,
they have now retrofitted their properties in a way that remove the legal parking on their sites. And that's where the issue comes from.
This is really a much broader problem because, yes, we have an exacerbated issue with the Layton house. And I feel for everyone because you have 20 spots and you're probably 30, 40 cars. I get it.
More.
And you need it. You need the
60
spots.
cars.
But there's a broader issue which we can't tackle here, but we do have single-file driveways all over the village now. That's a relatively new phenomenon. People now have to back up in very busy streets, and they take their lives in their hands in other areas of the village. I'm on Meeting House Lane, and it's a terror to get out. The culture has changed, to your point, Nancy, but we also have a lot of road garage conversions, and I've actually seen several. And, you know, it's not helping our village. It's not helping our first responders. It doesn't help our DPW department to be able to clean our streets when everybody's parked on them. Having said that, I thought the one lady was wonderful who said she wanted to do her share and remove cars. But I think the math has to be done, but from what I'm hearing, the corners are critical because you can't see. So those, to me, have to be protected, and you can't park on those. But for the rest, maybe one side is better. But I don't know if this deserves an analysis from a traffic consultant, but obviously people need to park. They live at Layton. They're our village residents. We want them to feel good here, but we also don't want others to have...
We want to accommodate them.
Right.
We have to accommodate them. You can't, have people living in a building and have no place to park. I'm sorry, but you can't.
Is there...
Maybe they have to park at the railroad lot.
John, hold on a second, I want to say something. Is there... Wait a second. No, it's not.
It's not? Okay, good.
No, you can speak again.
All right, good.
Who mentioned about who's doing the paving at the condos? Who said that? You did that? Delilah's doing it? So has there ever been a parking range type of study done back there?
No,
And
but
who
we
would-
already talked about, because he's going to repave.
You have to come.
Well, I mean, the repaving is nice, but I think, obviously, again, this is, aside of the Hildreth and Jennings and the overnight parking and all that, I do truly believe an isolated situation here is that clearly there's not enough parking for the condominiums. So I think part of that solution is whoever is the owner or oversees the condominium needs to, the onus is on the complex owner to address this for their residents.
It's all owned individually, they're condos.
Well, no, but they don't have markings.
Well,
They don't have, so I'm saying that has to be.
We are legally entitled to 20 parking spaces and 30 units. It would be nice if we intend to try to carve more spaces out, but my understanding is that this is what we have. We're not required to put more spaces in. We want to put more spaces in. And as for the situation of people turning their parking lots into pool houses or giving up parking spaces, they have every right to do that.
No.
If you don't want them to do that, you can make a rule in the village and say, you must keep, a driveway that can accommodate 4 or 5 cars. We do not have that. So you may not like it, but people can do it, right?
Let me just say, I know you say this, John, but some of those lots are very narrow. They're pre-existing. They have to accommodate the amount of cars based on the bedrooms. They probably can't do that, okay? And they can't do it, and you're not allowed to stack, and you know that that's the law. You can't stack. If you have 3 bedrooms, you have to provide for 2 parking spots. And it's not supposed to be stacked. You're supposed to have them side by side.
You can stack if it's pre-existing.
It's pre-existing, and that's the only thing that you can do.
All the houses on that street are pre-existing. They predate the prohibition against stacking, and they all did it until people decided they didn't want to have to move the cars. I'm not talking about Layton. I'm talking about the single-family residences on that street.
I'd like to know what the purpose of 12 to 6 is. Whose idea was that?
Current restrictions on Layton.
I'm sorry?
They're modeling the current restrictions on Layton Avenue.
On the very east end, because as we know, there are different rules for different, parking varies. There's a no from 12 to 6 at the east end of Layton. There's a plain no parking sign. Who knows what that means? Right after the Church Street corner. And then there's no signs except for that you can't park on the south side of the street. And so I take it there's different signs for different areas.
The 12 to 6, a lot of those came about because of the nightclub activity. So that was tackling another issue that is prone to your area.
Right.
So that's what, to answer your question,
I mean,
that's what that means.
I don't see any parking signs that say no parking on Pelletreau. That's closer to the nightclub than we are. I also paced off Hildreth, and it's, according to my footsteps, it looks narrower, but I was surprised I took the same number of paces. So I would say maybe we should measure these streets. I'm not opposed, and neither are many of us, to one side of the street parking. That's what you have on Layton. So why not have it on a street that clearly seems to need it? But to get rid of parking altogether just doesn't seem smart. I mean, why would you want that?
Because I don't want
any cars in front of your house.
Please. All right.
Is that it?
All right, well, you address us. You address the board.
We all have a certain amount of self-centeredness, but really that seems really transparently mean.
No, I want people to obey the law.
Ma'am, address the board, please,
I'm
not
sorry.
the public.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, well, that's
But it would be beneficial for the condo unit to look at the parking spots because, as other people have pointed out, when they have guests, you'll have less and less opportunity to park.
I know, and
so-
that's exactly what we're doing. It didn't take this to make us aware. A month ago, in our conversation about repaving, we talked to the sanitation people already, and we talked to the snowplow guy, where can we move the dumpster so we can get more parking? So we're thinking about this.
Because in you're a condo association, so you have your own
Yes.
association, so you do meet on this and discuss. And,
Yes.
okay, so that's
So,
good.
and that conversation about diagonal parking would really affect us. We're just not sure if we can do it, if we can fit.
Yeah. Well, but that can be quantified. It can be checked
Yep,
out. It
we're
can be
gonna figure
analyzed
it
and see
out.
if it works. I think moving a dumpster and that.
And then we could ask people to please, really, literally, lately, for the first time, I have to say, because people, we generally, by and large, have not had the parking lot full, unless it's in the winter and people are afraid, Now, people are, filling up that parking lot. So, but as long as they don't have to, you won't have people feeling obligated to park in the parking lot if they can park across the street.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before anybody else speaks, I just want to say that my intent is to leave this hearing open because there's obviously a lot of issues that have been brought up that we got to take a look at, from one side parking to Layton Avenue parking to the width of the street and a number of the residents there. So before you get really passionate and jump up and yell and scream, we're going to keep it open and take a look. But yes. Yep, absolutely.
You can take several minutes.
I might end up doing that too.
That's okay.
I'm Mrs. Paremba, lived on Layton Avenue since 1949. Okay? The only thing I would like to have seen done is, right now you can go on Layton Avenue, the leaves, the branches from trees, we don't get our side of the street, which is across the street from the condominium, swept. We do not get our side of the street with snow plowing. Right. I said I do work for the school, and I said they come on the south side, plow, and the last storm we had was 18 inches. All that snow went on top of the regular snow. I'm trying to get out of the driveway, and finally I said, okay, school was 2-hour delay. I said, okay. I said, what I'll do is I'll call the police station. They want me to go to work, they pick me up, they bring me home, because I couldn't get out of the driveway. And then finally, the village guys did come because of this big white truck, which has been mentioned previously, okay? They gently, but even that, they still had about 3 feet of my driveway that I had to get through to get out to the road, but they boxed everybody in. But the rest of the street was not plowed. And so that's the only 2 things I'd like to have as far as paying around here for taxes and a few other things. A few services on my side of the street for after 50-something years. Thank you very much.
I got you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said.
All right. With that said, unless there's somebody who hasn't made a comment that wants to make a comment, I would make a motion to keep this hearing open until the next meeting.
What is that?
24th. July 20th.
Can I ask you to push it to the month after, the meeting after that in August?
I mean, it may.
It probably will fall into that because I think there's a lot that we need to
We'll never get
take
this done.
The chances are, John, it won't. There's been a lot of things discussed here.
Yeah.
So yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
No. Well, we're going to, it'll be opened again at the next
Yeah.
meeting, but we're pretty positive we're never going to have everything done by that
The only
meeting.
reason I asked that is I will not be here.
Right, I understand that.
So I don't want to be foreclosed from any additional comment. So I respectfully request that you keep it open until the meeting after that.
So
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. We're going to keep the hearing open until John's
we're going to
back
keep
from
the
vacation?
well, we aren't going to keep the whole hearing open just for. No, relax.
Oh, I'm very relaxed. I just wanted to know what we were doing.
I think we have one more gentleman coming.
Robert Biasetti, 36 Jennings. I'm not going to be around in August, so can we push to September? Because we're not going to be here in August. And I'd like to be here to find out whatever John would like to have done. I don't know.
We're not committing to how long it's being open for, even to John. Thank you.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now, which is a little ironic, our next public hearing is on ethic code revisions. And, well, because we had such a battle over just parking in the street, and before we were chasing deer. So I'd like to make a motion to open the ethics code revisions hearing.
We waiting for Steve? Somebody record that?
I didn't even notice that Steve had left. Yep.
Let's just wait until they...
Yeah, chilly. Sunglasses returned.
Didn't even notice you guys were gone.
Wow.
I'll make
So we have a motion on the table to open the public hearing?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. With the opening of the public hearing, I'd like to introduce Mr. Leventhal. He's been pretty much directing and helping us on revising our ethics code, which has been long out of review. I think it's been at least 12, 13 years since we even took a look at it. And
I thought you were going to say it's been 12 or 13 years since we've been working on it.
Feels like it.
It's very appropriate that a discussion, well, good evening, Mayor and members of the board. It's very appropriate that a discussion of ethics should follow one about parking, because ethics codes are the rules of the road for government. I have extensive experience in this field, and that's why I was asked to assist the board and council in drafting and developing a new ethics program for the village. And I think a discussion about the ethics program should begin with an acknowledgement of what the purposes of the program are. And there are really two purposes to a local government ethics program. The first is to inspire public confidence in government by ensuring not only the reality, but also the appearance of integrity in government. When it comes to government ethics, appearances matter, because appearances have an impact on public perception and public confidence in government. But the second equally important purpose of the program is to guide and protect the honest officers and employees of the municipality by establishing a clear and comprehensive set of rules and helping them to understand what those rules are. Logic and experience indicate that the overwhelming majority of government officers and employees are honest, truly wish to do the right thing, and will do the right thing if they're helped to understand what the rules are. So we try to accomplish that in a variety of ways. The first, and the one that we're discussing tonight, is by drafting a code of ethics. This is a modern code of ethics as compared with the older one that was very reasonable, very serviceable at the time that it was enacted. It has served the village well over the years, but the code before you is a modern code, which, if adopted, would really place the village of Southampton in the vanguard with a cutting-edge code of ethics. It's organized in three primary sections. The first is the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct addresses such issues as prohibited interests in village contracts, outside investments and secondary employment, private use of village resources, prohibited gifts and favors, and quite a few other issues. So the first of the three sections is the Code of Conduct. The second section is disclosure requirements. And there are actually 5 different disclosure requirements in this code, which is a very significant step in the direction of transparency and openness in government. The first required disclosure is what occurs when an officer or employee of the village has a conflict of interest. They are required, of course, to recuse themselves, and at the time that they do that, they disclose the reason that they are recusing themselves. They disclose the nature of the conflict of interest. The second disclosure that's required is the disclosure of any interest that an officer or employee may have in village legislation, the legislation enacted by this board. Third, there is a requirement that applicants in land use applications, and by that I mean applications to the planning board, applications to the building department, applications to the zoning board of appeals, that those applicants at the time of their application identify any municipal officer or employee who has an interest in the applicant. Generally, that means an ownership interest in the entity making the application. The fourth type of disclosure required by this code addresses a situation where a member of a board receives a communication from an interested party outside of a board meeting. And this code requires that board members in such cases disclose the fact that that has occurred at a public meeting. Finally, there is a requirement for policymakers to file annual statements of financial disclosure, and we've modernized those provisions as well. So the first general section of the code is the Code of Conduct. It's clear and comprehensive. The second section of the law is the disclosure section. And the third section is the one that sets forth the powers and duties of the Board of Ethics. And we've modernized that one as well. The sources that we drew from in drafting this code, and I really should mention that this code is truly a collaboration between the mayor, the trustees, the village attorney, and members of the Board of Ethics, all of whom reviewed the proposal, met with me, made comments, gave input, and actively participated in the process of developing this Code of Ethics. So the sources were state law, the state law governing local government ethics, a model code of ethics developed by the state comptroller was also consulted. Extensive writings by commentators in the field of government ethics were collected and reviewed, and principles in those writings were incorporated into this code. And finally, we incorporated principles that have been developed by judges in cases that have been decided in the area of government ethics. So this, the adoption of this code, in my view, would be a very important step, but only the first step in developing what I would regard as a very modern and very effective ethics program. The second step, as the mayor and trustees know, and council, as we've discussed, is to produce a plain language guide that takes this legal language, which we have tried to reduce to as simple a form as possible, but it takes this legal language and expresses it in a much more abbreviated, even simpler form as an aid to officers and employees of the village. And we would publish that in a booklet together with the Code of Ethics itself. Because, of course, the code is the law, and it must be, and it's the law that would govern. But it would be published together with that plain language guide to offer assistance in interpreting the code. And this booklet would be distributed to the village workforce. It would be available to consult, and it's a very important tool in my view. Finally, the final step in developing this ethics program, after the adoption of a new code, if the board chooses to do that, would be a training program. Since it's a new code, it would be my recommendation that all members of the village workforce have the opportunity to attend a program in which all of the provisions of the code are explained to them so that they can understand it and be comfortable with it. And that's what is before the board tonight. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have. And if not...
Well, before we get into any questions, I just want to thank you personally for all the effort that you've done. You know, you've showed up at numerous times here, and there's been one or two of us, or, you know, somebody's missing, and your persistence has been absolutely terrific, and it is really something that personally I always wanted to see in the village, and thank you.
Well, thank you, and I have to say it has been a pleasure to work with this village administration because it has a sincere commitment to modernizing its ethics program, and that was very nice for me to see. Thank you.
It was an issue that we've discussed since the very beginning on addressing it. So you've been a tremendous help. Are there any questions, or, you know, we've had this for a while to review, so it's not like it's the first time we've seen it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor?
Any comments from the public? We have Chairman of the Ethics Committee in the back. Would you like to say anything? No? Anybody from the public?
When was the last ethics?
If you could just come up, Charlie will
I know you had said.
throw something at me.
Jessica Deasing, Layton Avenue, just sitting in on this. But when was the last ethics review done, or is it just?
Well, I can answer. The first ethics code in the village was adopted in 1970. There's been several amendments throughout the years. The last time there were some amendments to this code was in 2007. So, but what I would say is there has not been one overall comprehensive look at it, and that's what the board has done with Steve. So.
Any other comments? With that, I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing on the ethics code revisions.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And if conceivable, council, I'd like to make a motion to...
Well, what I would suggest is I haven't prepared a notice of adoption.
Okay.
But you need to have that. But if you're so inclined, it's up to the board.
Well, since we're talking about ethics and all that, would it be better to have that in place before and then make it the next meeting instead of jumping the gun on this?
Well, that would be probably
protocol,
more
perhaps?
proper.
Okay.
I mean, I break protocol.
The notice of adoption is not changing any form or substance of the law before you. It's just a procedural thing of the form of the notice that directs the village clerk to publish and file with the state.
Well, I can draft that tomorrow, but do you want to wait?
And we can have that drafted by tomorrow. That's the point. But if you want to hold it over to the next meeting and adopt it at the next meeting, that's fine as well.
Let's do that.
Trustees?
It's fine with me.
2 weeks, fine by me, not even.
Okay, so then
2 weeks or whatever.
we should,
My only suggestion would be is to
keep it open.
Why don't you keep the hearing open then, and in case there's any further written comments, maybe from the public after perhaps seeing this. The other thing is, I just want to make sure that Steve and I have one last opportunity to make sure we dotted the i's and crossed the t's, and there isn't any format or typo errors that may have come up in all the translation here. So
fair enough.
Do that. That gives us that 2 weeks, and then we'll have a notice of adoption prepared for the next meeting.
Well said, Counselor.
Typos is one of my specialties.
2 attorneys together, what could go wrong?
How could you go wrong?
Jeez.
So I'll make a motion to keep the ethics code revisions open until the next meeting.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve.
Aye. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just
Trip back.
suggest that Steve wouldn't necessarily have to be here next meeting. Have to sit through all that parking issues.
Don't hit any deer.
Thank you, Steve. Although you aren't on the agenda, I think you have something to share with us?
I brought all the same information that I did for the new fire truck as 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
But we're here to see if there's any questions the board may have, and/or ask for how do we proceed now.
Going forward.
I mean, obviously, I've discussed with them since the last meeting, and they asked any issues. I've basically here tonight, too, so we can send them on their way to go ahead with this, starting the legwork for this purchase. Unless you guys have any issue with that or have any more questions, that's what they're here for.
Well, one thing I want to say is I've never seen a report done as well as the one that you did.
Thank you.
It was amazing that all the time that you took and the way you organized it, and you spent a lot of time creating this vehicle, which I was very impressed with.
And this is just scratching the surface.
For the needs of the community and for what the volunteers feel is necessary to have a safe vehicle that can help within our community. And I was very impressed with how you did all that.
Thank you. And that's just scratching the surface. We still have another 15 months ahead of us after we get approval from you all.
Correct. I mean, we're not even...
You'll have to move into the factory.
Or redesign
So yeah, I mean, I think, whatever, go ahead, whatever.
Well, what I was going to say, you don't have a definite bid right now. I mean, you haven't gotten a price. What we would be doing is giving you the option to go out to bid on that truck.
So it's my understanding there's 2 ways to purchase this truck.
Okay.
There is the typical standard formal public notice, public bidding process. And then there's a co-op that the village purchases equipment on, NJPA co-op. This truck is on that co-op.
That's a price based on that.
Based on the information that I've given you already.
So we do actually have a price. That price presented going through the co-op is exactly what the price they would be looking to go out at.
Correct, which I have a copy of that with me. It was in all the information before, but so I don't misspeak.
So in other words, when you're there and you're making this wonderful vehicle, you suddenly say, oh, I forgot to add this. It might not be, they have to stick to this price? They will stick to the price.
We are working in a budget for the truck.
Okay, great.
And that budget...
And that doesn't, no, they're already, that's why they took 13 months to get to this point. Hopefully that doesn't occur. Generally it does not. That book is exactly what goes out to the manufacturer, and they've already done their choices. And if it ain't on it, then...
So we are asking for a budget of $587,850 to buy this truck. And it's my understanding that that and everything I submitted to you is on that NJPA co-op website for the village to buy that off of.
Right.
And that allows us to, we've designed the truck already.
Right.
So that's what they've priced for us.
Right.
So again, if there's no reservations from anyone, I'd like to send these gentlemen out to start that process.
I think it would be good, so I think you should make a motion.
Okay, Mayor, then I make a motion to send these gentlemen out to bid for the, I don't have the stuff.
It's actually authorization to purchase the truck.
Truck, right.
Per the NJPA
bid. Through the bid. Through the bid of the co-op bid. For the price of
1,587,850, right? 1,587,850, got it. Yep. Oh, well, you paid for your car last time, yeah.
Gotcha.
Mine is a lot, decimal points moved around.
There you go. You have a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
It was worth waiting, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Learned a lot about our
You have a
street
truck, will you
parking.
go out and do the same kind of report on all our parking requirements throughout the...
Yeah, right.
Did you see the visual and the movies last time? They could do that. Thank you, Mayor and Board, for that. Now, Chief Callahan mentioned something, another topic about the hydrants or something. Did we want to touch on that tonight, or?
All I know is he was going to bring something up about hydrants. I don't know what that information was, though. I can certainly go outside and call him and come back in if you like.
Okay, if you want to, while you guys are here, well, we maybe go other stuff, because I know he did mention something to me about that. I know he was there earlier. Maybe.
He did have to leave.
Correct.
So I can just run outside and give him a call and find out what that information is, because I truly...
Because I mean, I know a little bit about it. I could start it. And then even if he wants to give you little specifics, or Manny.
Get that information. They do have the third item.
Fire department, right. So that's the Dune Beach.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, generally, I mean,
That's the
just
party
quick,
for
I mean,
the
I'll throw
truck.
what the chief had mentioned was they wanted to, and it's been brought up in the past about being able to identify the hydrants. They wanted, I don't know what color, but they want to do the hydrants a different color, and also they want to see if through the water authority if they could put like the flag. Did you ever see the flag?
Yeah,
kind of
most
metal things,
have it
that's
on
the
display.
markers.
Yep.
They would need approval if they can go ahead and put those on our hydrants as well. I believe those.
On the hydrants throughout the village?
Correct.
Oh, how tall are those things?
I don't know. That's
I have one
I think
right in
they're
front of my-
I think they're I don't know 4 or 5 feet.
They're
or
a
something,
good
maybe
5
6.
feet tall.
Didn't they do those in the wintertime, Rich?
Usually
Every winter they put them on, right?
Did we put them out in the wintertime? Just
No?
No, it's in the village, in the town. I've seen some in the town, but
in town, see them.
I thought because of the snow.
And again, that's also a thing that goes through the water authority because again, they technically own them and we lease them from themselves. I'm sorry.
Proposal and cost.
Correct. So I don't know if you just wanted to preliminary go over that. Hides different color.
What else?
And I'll put it in pendants. We're allowed. Oh, and one other thing too, and we can always just think about this if he doesn't get back, about having the water authority put markers on the street. Sometimes you ever noticed in areas where they actually have,
Yeah,
so
they
you can
do.
see if they have the hydrants.
Yep.
Like a picture of a paint on a street surface itself about 5 feet out or so from the curb. So those are the few things he...
I wasn't able to reach Chief Callahan.
All right, so...
Is it talking about marking of fire hydrants better?
Yes.
In years past, we've had metal signs with reflective, metal posts with reflective signs behind the hydrants. Some of those have disappeared, I know. There are different colors of hydrants through the village that I know of, so they may be looking to coordinate, uniform all the colors of the hydrants, as well as putting some type of symbol in the street out in front of the hydrant to help us for nighttime.
Perhaps you can, if you could, Ed, for the next meeting for the board, so next one, what is it, 24th we said?
Yep.
Maybe get some of that done, because now we got the truck done, so perhaps you guys, or you can have Alfie come back and whatever this was he wanted to present to the board.
Perfect. But you're not holding my truck up for that, right?
No, your truck is done. You got to vote. You're good to go.
Ransom.
Awesome. Party would be
While you're here, can I just bring up one thing? And it's part of our discussion. And alarm fees.
Okay.
Fire alarm fees. I had one of the chiefs, my fire alarm went off on 4th of July during the parade. And I got a phone call from my alarm people. I hadn't done anything. I mean, I was shocked. You know,
right.
Here it is, get out of the house, fire, get out of the house. So they called me and I just said, I don't see anything. And they were concerned and said, look, let's send somebody over anyway. I just want to make sure that you're okay. They did, and while the chief was there, I said, I am so sorry. He said, you called me out of the parade. But I said, I know, and that's what I didn't want to do. But anyway, while he was there, he said, look, we have a problem with this. And it was a problem that I had brought up when we first decided that we were going to charge people for each alarm. And the first one I think is free. Then the next one I think you get charged.
40.
Then it doubles the next, and it keeps going up. And he said, the problem is that a lot of senior citizens are really upset over it because they'd be cooking in their kitchen and it would get a little smoky and the alarm would go off. And the fire department would arrive at the door and they'd knock on the door and the people would open it and slam the door in their face because they didn't want them there in the first place and they knew they were going to be charged for it. So he said, you got to do something about it because this is the first line of defense. And people are upset and they don't even want to use it, and some people are disconnecting because they're afraid they're going to get charged should the fire department get called. I said, well, you know, when we were discussing it, we had an issue with construction and a lot of them going off in construction. And he said, yes, and we've discussed this with the fire marshal, and he can handle that himself if we get called. He said, but please bring this up at the board, for the board, because he said our guys are very upset over it. So I don't know if you've had any of that experience.
Yeah, actually, because it's almost what the chief was telling us. It's become counterintuitive to where people are afraid to use it because they're going to get slammed with fee, and that's you know we put the tragedy
of it. That would be the tragedy of it.
Well, we put the fines in place because of the habitual ones, the construction, and some people will just habitually set off their fire alarms not because they're elderly, but because they're always burning something. And it is a false alarm, or they trip the alarm, or usually a lot of the burglar alarms. So that's why we did it, but obviously the unintended side effect is now that. So, but the answer to that is us. It lies in our hands how we want to do that. We're the ones who control that and decide that.
I think we should lift the fee. I think we should lift the fee. And if, in fact, it's construction site, they said the fire marshal can handle that. The fire marshal can go over there and realize.
Yeah, that could be an isolated.
And he can give them a summons for that. But as far as people who live in their homes, you know, having smoke in their house because they burned something on the stove, and having the fire department come over, you know, and then get charged and repeatedly when there's on a budget to begin with.
The charge is for the false alarms. If it's a bona fide call, you're not going to get charged for it. It's for the false alarms. It's the ones who trip off accidentally and they go and it's not a real, or even smoke.
That's not the way it is, Rich. It's not. If they get called, you get billed. If they arrive at the scene, you get billed.
It's a false alarm. If they arrive to put out a fire, they're not getting billed for it.
No, I understand that. But if they arrive and it's a false alarm, like mine was a defect, they get billed. And that's why they don't want you there.
Trustee McGinn, your call was the first time that's happened at your house. Is that correct in that statement? Or first time in 6 months? Or something?
First time in a couple of years. It happened a few years ago.
So
the same alarm. And for no, you know.
I know there's some duration of time in there.
Yes.
I'm sure you weren't.
I'm not worried about the fee for me. That's not my point.
No,
my point is that he brought this up to me and said, we're concerned.
Yes. Okay.
The fire department is concerned and the guys are concerned. Please bring it up at the board. We need to discuss this.
Yep.
We don't want these people slamming doors in our faces because they don't want to get charged.
Yep.
It's really a very sad situation, and I agree with that.
Yeah. So again, that's more the chiefs that are responding to those, and or the captains filling in for the chiefs. That's above my pay grade. and
Oh,
the
okay.
volunteer association.
I just thought I'd
as we
bring
all
it up
get paid
since
the
you were
same.
here.
But again, that's something that is our, for us to consider or reconsider.
Yes, well, that's why I put it as a discussion.
You know,
Absolutely. What I'd certainly say is that it is unfortunate when people are getting billed. I don't know if there's any leeway, you know, with the village, but it's a village administration handled thing. The fire department, to my knowledge, does not actually receive those funds.
I think there is some leeway. Really, the egregious examples,
and I do
really are the ones who get addressed.
I do hear
one-on and two-on situations. We're not really in the business of hammering them.
Exactly. I do hear on the pages that Mrs. Smith has a fire alarm going off. She's called. She burnt bacon, you know, or things like that, and they have turned off and stopped the call. And then at other times, you know, there are people in the house, but it was a child who answered the phone. They think it's bacon burning on the stove, and they've continued on. You know, so there are ways for the homeowners to stop the call, but they have to be proactive with it and, you know, speak to the dispatcher from a calm point of view. If there's any elevated things like that, the fire department's going to respond because it's if we stop going, the liability then falls to us.
That's not even an option. And I don't think anybody's proposing that, but even if they did, that would never, ever be an option. They have to go.
Right.
They're going out to go. But that is, I'm glad you mentioned that, because yes, there is a way to mitigate some of it, and it is the responsibility. The homeowner is putting these alarms in and they're paying for those monthly services, what have you. There is a way, because I've had an alarm go off myself, and I know the process. I got the call. I called, I gave the correct responses to the service, and they stopped it. And I actually called dispatch and said, hey, you know,
exactly.
So there are ways, if the person does it in time frame that they're prescribed to, instructed to, as per their contract with the service, you can mitigate that.
Exactly.
Well, in my case, truly there was no smoke. I mean, it was a malfunction of my alarm that I had, and it was called in when he came to my house. The woman who called me from the alarm company was concerned, and actually I thought to myself, well, I hope it's not this, but where my smoke alarm is located, it's close to where my air conditioning units are in the attic, and it was very, very, very hot, and I thought, could it be something in the attic? But there was no smoke. There was nothing there. There was no smell of smoke. There was nothing.
They detect a lot of different things.
But, yeah, but so they wanted them to come and see. I mean, I'm not looking at this from my point of view, but when he said, we have people who are disconnecting because they're afraid that they're going to get billed or they're going to, that to me is awful.
Yep, I would agree.
I mean, that's the line of first defense. And if they have to disconnect because they're afraid it's going to cost them money to, you know, they set off the alarm, it's not what we want.
Absolutely.
It's not what I want. I don't think anyone on this board would want
But
that.
also keep in mind, too, again, devil's advocate here, I understand that argument, but sometimes the answer is too bad because they're called, they have to go out. There's never time they're going to not go because, God forbid, like you said, there's no smoke, but something set it off. Yeah. So just because you might detect something, the chief as the lieutenant has to come in and inspect it to make sure. And then, because God forbid if they didn't and something actually was going on, then everybody is in a bind. So, but also, some people are worried about the fees. That's some of it. And some people are just, well, they just aren't concerned. Like a scenario, unfortunately, where you've had people where they don't like the sound of it and they've disconnected and throw it out the window, and it became a health issue. So there are many reasons, not just the financial part.
Well, I'd like us to
that
look
people
into
take it upon themselves to.
That's my point.
Sounds good.
But there is a cost incurred to send these people out in 3 in the morning and all that. So that's where the balance is. Okay, false alarms fees, can it always be for free? I don't know if that's the answer because there is a cost incurred to send these people out. As you know, $1.6
Fine,
million.
we'll discuss it with the chiefs because he's the one who told me to bring it up.
Yeah.
Now, a real big question I have.
Yes.
Is your son going to run this new truck?
So he may be a member by the time it arrives.
So yes.
Yeah, that'd be exciting. That'd be absolutely great.
He's got the calendar on the countdown as when he can put his application in when he turns 18. So
That's great.
Thank you.
He'll be tall enough, he doesn't even have to step up. He can just open up the door.
That's right, look at that, doesn't need a ladder.
He won't need a ladder to
Right.
access the right. Exactly. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for coming back with the president, the other stuff. And have the other stuff for next time with
Absolutely, the hydrants.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you guys for coming back out. Thank you.
Before you go to communications, do you want to take action on the Tates?
Parking?
Parking?
Yes.
I tried to do that before. You
I
told me
do
to
have
wait.
a notice of
What?
adoption on
I tried
that.
to do that. You told me to wait.
The council said wait till we did all the public hearings, so we did all the public hearings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it when you do the resolution, so either way.
Hey, get out of the way before we forget about it.
So I do have a notice of adoption on that. The only thing you would need to do is figure out which number local law to insert.
Pick one.
Oh, well, that would be up to Steve to...
Yeah, I'll help do that. I guess number 7, but don't hold me to it. Yeah.
What number it is for the...
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah, what are we up to? I don't know.
So
you can just pass that down to Steve. That's a notice of adoption. Yes.
Notice of adoption.
I actually think I emailed you.
Yes. Yeah. I told you, Secretary, you're being a little presumptuous on the email.
Just wanted to be
No, that's for
prepared.
Steve.
I guess I wasn't prepared on the ethics code. So.
Thank you.
Well, I'll make a motion to adopt a local law number on the North Sea Road parking in Tate's Bake Shop.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Yaz?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Irving?
Aye.
Trustee McCann?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, so we have 3 communications. First one from Robin Hood Foundation, Lemonade. I'm writing to ask for permission for Robin Hood donors to hold lemonade stands in support of Robin Hood over the Labor Day weekend in the village of Southampton. Details as follows. Lemonade to take place on Saturday, September 1st, Sunday, September 2nd, Monday, September 3rd. Families will choose only one date. Time for the event will be restricted from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Participating families will design homemade lemonade stands. Locations where activity takes place will be restricted to a village area or private residences. Public locations will be given permission, including Juice Press 93 Main Street. Participants will seek the permission of any business or property owner if desiring space in the village area. Written permission from each business owner will be provided prior to the event. Lemonade stands will be clearly marked by Robin Hood signage in exchange for goods at stands. Participants will accept donations on behalf of Robin Hood. Lemonade will not be sold. Robin Hood currently funds several programs in the Long Island area, including Island Harvest, Interfaith Nutrition Network, and Feeding America, among many others. Donated proceeds will be used to continue funding schools, food pantries, homeless shelters, job training programs, and other vital services in Long Island and New York City. The town of Southampton has been a tremendous ally in our fight against poverty. Please know how deeply we appreciate the continued support, and thank you for your consideration.
Do this every year.
I think we've done this,
We've done this probably 5 years now.
Yep, yep. And it's been pretty successful, so I make a motion to accept the Robin Hood Foundation Lemonade.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, communications from the Southampton Association. The recent approval of Southampton Hospital to construct a new facility at the Stony Brook Southampton University campus on County Road 39 will have a significant impact on the village of Southampton. We believe thoughtful and collaborative planning is critical to ensuring that the existing hospital site in the village center is repurposed in a way that benefits all members of our community. The Southampton Association will be willing to help fund a high-quality study by the village and its planning commission to review needs, community desires, and alternatives. In the past, we have supported other village planning efforts which we believe were successful. Our hope is to help all interested parties create a plan that best fits the interests of our diverse community. Thank you for your consideration. And the last one is...
Very nice letter.
Yep. And the last one's from the Southampton Fire Department. The fire department is requesting use of Dune Beach on August 5th from noon to 4 for our annual beach party. Also, we would like to request the use of Downs Family Park on August 20th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will need the full use of the parking lot and the fields to do an efficiency run drill. We invite North Sea, Bridgehampton, Sag Harbor, Hampton Bays, and East Quogue fire departments to join us in this drill. There's a lot of fun and brings the departments together. Again, thank you for all you do for us. It's a pleasure to serve you and the village's fire chief, Chris Brenner. So both locations are available. There's no conflicts with anything.
I'd like to propose or make the motion that we accept.
Two resolutions, two
What day is August 5th?
Usually it's a Sunday. I'm looking right now, but I believe it's a Sunday.
Sunday.
They normally do it on a Sunday every, yeah.
I say it's a Saturday.
Huh? August 5th. No, it's a Sunday.
Oh, the 5th, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the 5th. The beach thing they do.
Yeah,
is
that's
always on
Sunday, I'm sorry.
The 20th is a Monday. And if it's available, then I move to...
Two resolutions.
The two resolutions. Huh?
Do one on each.
Okay, so I make a motion to allow the Southern Fire Department use Dune Beach on August 5th from noon to 4 p.m. for their annual beach party.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I make a motion that the Southern Fire Department, in conjunction with neighboring fire departments, use the Downs Family Park on August 20th, which is a Monday, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. For an efficiency run drill session.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then just to go back to the Southampton Association letter, I don't think we need to adopt anything, but the Planning Commission has been studying the issue of the Southampton Hospital moving, and the Planning Commission has been studying the issue because Southampton Hospital is surrounded by so many medical facilities that probably, I would think, would move with them, and they've been reviewing that too. What I'll do is I'll reach out to them and ask them to contact Paul Travis directly and see if Paul needs any assistance.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
I just have a question on this. I mean, the hospital is privately owned, is it not? It's Stony Brook.
Stony Brook.
Correct.
Stony Brook. And so if we do a study like this, does it have an impact on a privately owned institution?
We'd have to ask Paul. I believe it does because I believe they're operating as a pre-existing non-conforming entity.
Not non-conforming, it's in the hospital zone, so
Is
you
it in the
zoned it that
hospital
way.
zone?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, so you would
That's
be
a medical.
undertaking, like any other zoning analysis for private property, some future use, you know, if in fact it no longer is a hospital.
And is that exactly what they're doing? I mean, is that what they
We don't know,
want to do?
but I think obviously
No,
part
no,
of
but
the
I'm saying, is that
study
what the
would be
Planning Commission is
seeking to understand from the hospital what ideas they have for future use, whether they plan on staying in some sort of medical form, or is it they just going to turn around and put it on the market, so to speak.
Have they given any indication to you what they plan? I mean, they've invested a lot of money in a lot of special, not that it can't be moved, but there's a lot of specialized.
No, they have not
treatment
indicated.
I
Facilities.
thought years ago they had indicated a nursing facility there, but I don't know.
It's going to be a few years before they can get this new facility even approved and built. That's not to say that we shouldn't start thinking about it, and that's what future planning is about. So.
Which is good.
Okay.
Good.
Resolutions, item 1, resolved that the reading of the minutes for the public session of June 26, 2018 be dispensed with, and those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator, and the actions taken at the meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the reading of the minutes for the organizational meeting on July 2nd, 2018 be dispensed with, and those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator. The actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Can I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the claims to warrants dated July 12, 2018, totaling $646,920.53. Warrant 5 general fund payables, $49,147.24. Warrant 4 general fund, $8,086.58. Warrant 3 trust fund, $52,066.61. Warrant 2 expense trust fund, and $869,155.14. Warrant 3 capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the period from June 22nd to July 5th, 2018 be audited and approved. Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion on page 1, Aries Design, design fees for Agawam Park, DK fire suppression, sprinkler inspection for the buildings, $1,200. Page 3, Buzz Chu Chevrolet Olds, parts for the garage, $1,031.89. Carl and Jack's DPW uniforms, $4,073.84. Cast Productions video services for June, $2,360. Chaliff and Rogers, the payment towards the design of the new carriage house restoration, $1,000. Going on to page 4, Commission on Vets Patriotic Events, $2,000 contribution towards the 4th of July parade. Commission of Taxation and Finance, MTA tax for the second quarter, $9,760.75. Page 5, EMT Government Accounting Services for June, $1,101.88. Firematic Supply, supplies for the fire department, $5,985.92. First Presbyterian Church, June parking lease, $3,000. Fowler's Garden Center, going up to page 6. Park supplies, $4,987.42. Grade 8 Petroleum, garage oils, $1,420.03. Page 7, Granger, parts for the garage, $11,201.32. Herrick Hardware Supplies, $2,287.22. Hildreth's, 2 benches, $1,758. Integrated Wireless Technologies, computer services for the fire department, $1,104.08. Page 8, James Lynch Irrigations, Agawam Sprinkler Repairs, $2,521. Johnson Electrical Construction Corp., $1,575.44 for rearranging, rescheduling the lights for the U.S. Open. Compang, Park Equipment Repairs, $8,508.16. Page 9, Long Island East Printing, arrest folders for the PD, $1,300. Page 10, Maldisi Equipment, garage supplies, $1,666.53. Mayday Communications, annual maintenance agreement for the PD console, 911 console, $22,864. Messiano Consulting, June grant writing services, $1,425. Page 11, More Medical, ambulance supplies, $2,141.77. Morgan Auto Supplies, garage supplies, $2,992.10. Page 12, Norsec & Son Carting for June, $5,050. One Source Tool Supply, building supplies, $1,127.91. Optimum Cable Services for June, $1,739.54. Page 13, Vulcan Fire Training, rope training for the fire department, $4,800. Precision Arc Shields, fire department shields, $2,018.20. PSE&G collection services for June, electric, $5,725.95. Daniel Rayner, fire department volunteer medical reimbursement, $1,000. Rosemar Construction, $424,291.12 for paving on Meeting House Lane, Main Street, Howell and Halsey, Moses and Pelham, and Meadow Lane. And page 15, Southampton Masonry Supplies for the Highway Department, $2,282.25. Sprague Operating Reserve, 2 deliveries of gasoline, $3,000 each, 3,000 gallons each, $13,093.20. Page 16, Suburban Auto Services, vehicle parts, $1,646. Suffolk County Village Officials, 2018 dues, $1,250. Dyson Krupp Elevator, Fire Department maintenance contract for the elevator at 470 Hampton Road for $3,497.01. Top of page 17, Vince Toomey, legal fees for June, $2,853.62. Vehicle Tracking Solutions, GPS charges, $1,151.52. Velvet Top Products, paint for the Highway Department, $1,440. Verizon Service Wireless for June, $2,801.18. And WG Services, HVAC service contract, $2,727.50. And on page 18, WB Mason office supplies, $1,461. Next warrant is the July payables warrant. Alliance System Integrators, Fire Department door system repair, $2,000. Civic Plus, revamping our website, $8,000. Coastal Fire Systems, Fire Department Equipment, $21,044. Page 2, Daniel Guzowitz, ZBA member, medical reimbursement, $1,000. Page 3, Alan McFarland, medical reimbursement from the Planning Board, $1,000. Christina Redding, for ARB, $1,000. Rico's Clothing, Fire Department uniforms, $1,854.40. And Riverhead Building Supply and Fire Department Saw and Supplies, $1,240.93. Next warrant is the trust warrant. Awards and gifts. These are for awards for the July 4th Parade, $2,252.70. Braun Marketing, mailing for the July 4th Parade, $2,289.08. Lennon Flags for the 4th of July Parade, $1,020. And North Shore Golf Cart car rentals for the 4th of July Parade, $1,000. Next warrant is the expense warrant. Granger basketball hoops, $5,999.95 for Lola Prentice. Rosemont Construction paving of the basketball court at Lola Prentice, $9,000. South Fork Septic Systems, Agawam Septic System for the new bathrooms, $31,893. VHB Landscaping and Architects design services for the Agawam baths, $3,730. And Village of Southampton, this is to reimburse the general fund for Riverhead Building Supplies that we paid out for the new baths. The last warrant is the Capital Reserve warrant. Jayliff and Rogers, payment towards the Pierce Concert restoration, $4,834.94. Coastal Fire Systems, $837,866.20. New Scott packs and a compressor. Island Tech Services Red Alert Service Agreement for the Fire Department, $12,484. Mayday Communications, Police Department radios, $11,070. Weber and Braun, Fire Department mezzanine work, $2,900. Further discussion? All in favor?
Just one quick thing. In the scheme of things, it's not huge, but back on Granger, there was a $9,700 purchase.
What is that on?
That was,
I mean, that Granger's usually not.
yeah, I think that was some major hydraulic part for the garage.
Oh, okay.
Hold it for you.
No, it's,
The 970314?
no, it's 330612 is what it is. Page 18, 7 of 18.
33,000?
No, not 9,000.
Oh, yeah, 9,70314.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pull the detail for you.
Okay.
Is it Sprague or Sprague?
Sprague.
It's Sprague.
Sprague. Sprague. Okay. Item 4, resolve that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the attached schedule of budget transfers to eliminate overages through July 12th, 2018 for the fiscal year ending May 31st, 2018. Have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second? Second. Discussion. Item 1, $310 Justice Court overtime, $6,150 out of Central Garage overtime, with $310 going to Justice Court personal services, $1,500 to Central Garage contractual, and $46.50 into Central Garage personal services. Next one is $36,500 coming out of safety inspection part-time, with $300 going into safety inspection overtime, $36,000 into safety inspections personal services, and $200 into safety inspection telephone. Next one is $15,400 from Parks seasonal, $13,800 from Shade Trees contractual, $9,900 from Parks overtime, with $36,500 into Parks personal services, $500 into Parks contractual, $1,100 into Parks utilities, $500 into Parks clothing, and $500 into Parks telephone. Next one is $19,250 out of Trustees special projects, with $350 going to culture personal, $13,500 into employee benefits social security, $300 into Trustees personal, $2,000 into Trustees contractual, $100 into mayor personal services, $1,000 into mayor's assistant, $100 into assessment personal services, $1,200 into clerk personal, and $700 into DPW personal. Next one is $7,400 coming from buildings overtime, $8,000 from buildings seasonal, $4,600 from buildings contractual, with $20,000 going into buildings personal services. Next one is $3,300 from street administration seasonal, $11,050 out of street administration overtime, $10,750 going to street maintenance personal services, and $3,600 into street maintenance fuel. And the last one is $100,000 coming out of trustee special projects, $27,000 out of ambulance miscellaneous, $7,200 out of employee benefits medical fire, $12,200 out of employee benefits medical, $8,900 from street administration overtime, $22,100 from park seasonal, $34,500 ambulance salaries, $20,500 from jail attendant, with $176,000 going to police personal, $13,900 into police overtime, $2,000 into police seasonal, $15,500 into police holiday vacation travel, and $25,000 going into radio operators personal service. On the last one, I just want to point...
Can I ask a question
Sure.
on that? What is that? I don't understand. So we have police personal of $176,000.
Right.
And it's coming out of all these other areas. Why is that set up that way?
Because those are the ones I have excess funds in, okay? And the reason the police personal is so high is that we paid out compensated absences for Chris Moll, which I would normally take out of the reserve, but I have enough in the general fund that I don't want to draw down that reserve account.
Okay.
So I'm able to do it out of the regular budget.
All right. I'm glad I asked.
That's why there's so many coming to assemble that amount of money.
Right.
I just didn't want to take it out of the reserve account.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves Oscar Bowling as a probationary member of Hook and Ladder 1, effective July 12, 2018. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves Sean Connery as a probationary member of Hook and Ladder Company Number 1, effective July 12, 2018. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves John Donovan as a probationary member of Southampton Hose Company Number 1, effective July 12, 2018. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one is resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following payment from the capital reserve account, subject to permissive referendum. Mayday Communications, $11,070 out of major equipment reserve. Shaliff and Rogers, $4,834.94 facilities reserve. $837,866.20 to Coastal Fire Systems and the Fire Equipment Reserve, $12,484 to Island Tech Services and the Fire Equipment Reserve, and $2,900 from the Fire Facilities Reserve to Weber and Garon. Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then 2 discussion items. We went through the alarm fees, and the next one is the traffic.
Okay, I asked to bring up traffic because last Friday in our village of Southampton, we were in complete gridlock. The police department had to send out a policeman for every corner where we have a traffic light because people would go through the green, sit in the middle of the road, people going east-west couldn't move, people going north-south couldn't move. It was in complete gridlock. And I know that where I work and I leave the parking lot, I only say these things because it's been my experience, so it enlightens me from my daily experience as to what's going on. So I pull out of the parking lot and I go up to Pine Street, and you take a left on Pine Street because that's the only way we can go. We made that a one-way. And then you go up to the traffic light, and thank God there was a policewoman there who was making everyone turn right. Normally you could turn left, but they weren't doing it because it was in such gridlock that you could only turn right, which is the way I go normally anyway. But one of the things I want to say, and I brought this up before, and I'd really like to look into it, about that parking lot behind Citarella. You can come in off of Hampton Road between the building that faces Main Street and the building that I'm in. And I only know this because I'm in this building. I'm not looking for any sort of special favors or anything. But when I come in, it's a no exit on that. It's very wide there, but there's a no exit on to Hampton Road. And what's happened there is because we made it a one-way on Pine Street, and because now it's not so bad because of the school, but now we have a lot of people who are here and they use Citarella, it backs up. It really, really backs up in the parking lot. And there's no way around it but to sit there and hope that when you make that left, that you're going to get through a light at some point. And the only other thing that you can do is cut through the parking lot across from Fellingham's and cut your way through there. I mean, I hate to say it, but I do it sometimes and come around Meeting House Lane and come up Main Street. When school gets out, when the kids are in school and the children are let out at close to 3 o'clock, parents actually sit in their car and they don't move. They wait for their kids to get out. So you have all these cars that are lined up.
Idling.
Yeah, just idling, and you're sitting there waiting to turn, and you can't because you have to wait for the kids to get out of school. I would really like to look into allowing a right turn only at the parking lot that is between the building that I'm in and Main Street. And I brought it up before. I don't know if Gary didn't like it. I don't know what. I think it's wide enough to do it there. And there are people doing it anyway. I mean, they're all exiting where there's a no exit, because I see it all the time.
No, it's a visibility issue, that's why.
it's
Because you
coming
have
around
cars,
that
you have
corner.
diagonal, and you have cars parking, and you have,
Well, they're
it's a
doing
traffic,
it.
it's an intersection, so that's why it's always been that way. I know people are doing it, and I know to discuss it definitely, but to answer your question, that's why it's never been an exit, because of the location of it.
Well, let's look into it, please, because we've created a real issue there.
Well, we created an issue when we made whatever street one way, to be honest with you.
And I had someone say...
I was never for making that a one-way street, but whatever. That is now
I had someone
decided.
say to me, could we turn it back since school is out into a two-way? There's no way you can do it. It's not wide enough now.
Well, you can do that. We would just have to undo, But
Well, I don't think it's wide
I was never for making that a one-way for this reason, because
We narrowed the road. I don't think it's wide enough.
unnarrowed. It's grass and concrete, curbing. It can be lifted up as easily as it got put down. As a common as a solution, in my humble opinion.
Anyway, so that was what I wanted. I mean, traffic was, the worst, actually the worst I have ever seen. Totally the worst I've ever seen. So,
Like bumper cars in there in front
it was unbelievable.
Everybody's going this way. It's unreal.
Choking up intersections, not moving, couldn't move. Every intersection was in gridlock, and it was a nightmare.
And
Oh, no,
tolerance.
I certainly didn't
A
like
lot
it.
of it, I think, is the light timing, too.
Well, I actually spoke to PD, and then Greg went down there to just get somebody at that light by Pine Street, because it was literally backed up from La Parmigiana all the way around the circle. They were backed up by the chamber, and the car was just going they were just standing. They weren't.
Well, I was in the middle of that, so I can tell you that was what was
going forward. That light is the only way out of there.
Yes, which is why going forward, we do have to seriously look, maybe, and that was always a discussion. One of the reasons that need to be one way is because somehow it got tossed into the safe routes to school thing, and it had to be done. Well, like many other things we've done through grant programs, there is a shelf, there is a window of opportunity that expires, and you can revisit it without forfeiting the funds for it.
True.
I don't know if we're there yet, but I even remember telling people that, boy, if this really becomes a crap show, then you know what? The good news is we can always revisit it.
Yeah, there's a period of time we have to wait.
Could you actually see if we're at that expiration time? I forget what that window is, but I always know that.
I believe it was 2 years, but I'll check.
And wasn't that grant tied to building that walkway and island behind Cinderella so kids could
which is what we did.
But what did the grant have to do with the one-way street?
I don't know. I think that just got
No, because it was
I
a
think it
safe
just got
routes to
tossed in.
school, and the
Safe routes
school
to school.
actually asked if we would make that a one-way because they did. I mean, they asked us if we would make it, and it had to do with the way the school buses came.
Well, what we've discovered since then, and the school bus and all that, there have been some things that haven't worked with that. So again, no different than when we put diagonal parking on Hampton Road, Saturn Reeves, that because the grant was up and we could make changes. So I believe the grant is now up on that project, and we could at least look into putting Pine back to a two-way all the way to Meeting House, so people aren't just taking a left-hand turn.
And they're not trapped.
I can check on it.
Yeah, but that would be
They're
first.
changing.
But they are. You're right. They're trapped.
To the other side.
Right.
To Little Plains. Because aren't they cutting the road through?
Well, that's a school issue, yes, that would cover this, I know it's,
But
where
that
is
would
that?
help,
What are you talking about, as far as the school buses
not
getting out to
only
Little
are
Pines?
you
I think it's
waiting
school
for the
buses,
parents,
isn't it?
but then,
Well, they haven't
and all
done
the
it, the town has
teachers
to.
come out and they
okay that.
line up on the
No, I don't think so. I
So
think
you're
they're
like
gonna
sitting there for at least a
But they
half
didn't
an
open it
hour.
up yet, it's still fenced.
I can speak
I
to
know
that.
because I use Pine Street all the time.
There was a correspondence with to the mayor before, and the school district was suggested with the parking lot issue connection through the town parking lot and so on, is actually to get advice and recommendations from the planning board. And they're actually going to have a public informational meeting, I believe, at their next meeting in August on this, where the school district is going to present their proposal. A representative was there at their last planning board meeting to give a preliminary discussion, and it was interesting to see the whole layout and design, how they modified it for the buses. And this will be for buses only to exit, not a general thoroughfare. It's going to be restricted with a gate and so on and so forth. But that is going to be presented by the school district to the planning board and the public as a public informational meeting for the benefit of our residents. So it's one step that the school district is even looking in, because their issue is primarily at the light in the intersection.
Yes.
Right.
Having school buses not being able to make the left on Pine Street.
Yeah, that threw them, when we made that one way, that threw them, that was the first thing that got thrown. I heard a lot about that. My kids were actually, one of the kids were in that school at the time. So yeah, every day I'd hear that.
Trying to be
school and the
responsive
parents. Well. Yeah, but I think the only issue there was the town saying okay, and they don't have a problem with it. So I think that's pretty much easy to.
Yeah, they're using an existing curb cut.
Right,
So
they just
they're
cut
not
through.
creating a new curb
No.
cut, it's just a connection through, and it would be only for buses.
Right, opening a fence. Really.
But it's a public informational meeting will be at the planning board. Our planning board chairman is here, so that is scheduled, and he's going to send notices out.
Oh, good.
Pretty important. Chairman.
Okay. Comments from board members? Trustees Grimsky.
I don't know, a lot was covered. I do want to, I know what fills up a room, zoning and parking, so. Always does. A lot of passion. I appreciate everybody showing up and certainly giving their input on it. Not done yet, but as usual, as I said all the time, half the room likes it, half doesn't, so that's why we get paid the big bucks to ultimately figure it out.
Right.
So I thank the public showing up for that.
Trustee Allen.
I also thank the public for showing up. I thank the public for stopping me, although sometimes Stop and Shop has changed from shopping to being stopped.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Welcome to that. I like that.
It's fine. It's fine. I say to my husband, I'll be back in 15 minutes.
he
and
knows better.
He knows better. But we had a great 4th of July parade, and everyone did a wonderful job. Every band, every organization, every float, the musicians, it was terrific. And the CBO did a great job pulling that together. And I think we've had a nice stretch of good weather.
Yay.
Yay. And so I'm hoping we'll have another good stretch of good weather. Did anybody attend the concert in the park last night, hosted by SCC? That was terrific. They've got another 6 or 7. I'm not going to steal your thunder. But my mother reminded me, we're approaching hurricane season. So my one plug tonight is for everybody to just quickly go to Suffolk County government site, if you have a computer at home, and if you don't, call them, and get your emergency management planning kit, because I remember the last time we had a hurricane come, and you go to CVS or anywhere and try and get a D battery, it was impossible.
You're right.
So stock up now before it's too late.
Are you all prepared?
I am.
Good, I'm just going to go to your house. That's my plan.
Bring your food.
That's it.
Diana stew.
And yes.
Trustee McGann.
Well, I think we covered a lot tonight, and I agree with Rich. I just feel that I heard from a lot of people. I mean, people called me, to discuss a lot of the parking issues, and it's personal, took trips over, took a good look at what they were talking about, and it made me feel great to know that they came out and they're voicing their opinion, and it's the way we get things done. We have to hear from everybody. So tonight was a really, really good community meeting. And I thank everybody for that.
It was good. I think we have quite a long ways to go to look at
I know.
Those roads and parking.
No, that's never
off late.
a layup.
We got a lot of work ahead of us. What I'd like to say is thank the CVO for the 4th of July parade. You know, they do such a great job. Our vets are just so terrific. To see them marching and all the amount of effort that they give to the village is unsurpassable. You know, you can't really thank them enough. And you know, I really have a good time at the 4th of July parade. 4th of July parade and the Parade of Lights are just, to me, it's a lot of fun. You know, seeing all those people and standing there and everybody in good moods, how can you go wrong?
And no explosions.
No explosions, yeah, that's right. We did.
No transformers exploding.
You know, I did hear that a couple of the people showed up to sell Mylar balloons were quickly chased out of the village. As a matter of fact, somebody called me and said that they saw a car leaving with all these Mylar balloons sticking out the windows, which...
And a very sad driver.
I thought was classic. You know, the other thing I want to mention is the basketball courts that we've looked at up there. You know, I was so concerned because over the years, I mean, we look back, but all the way back to the 70s, they've tried different projects. So they told me today they have 6 teams organized to play up there.
Wow.
And they've requested to go from, I think, you know, I'm not a basketball guy, but I think 34-inch backboards, well, they want 72-inch backboards, you know, because that's what the pro teams want to meet, and I think they're going to do the, and the covering they're putting down, they're picking colors.
When you look up there, there's a lot of space there because it's all fenced in. The actual area it's going to be, that's a good amount of space there. Looks good.
So, you know, that to me, that is great that they pulled that together, and if I can go up there and watch 6 different teams play, that's going to be pretty exciting. And then the other thing that you mentioned, the hurricane season, well, we did have a very low tropical depression, hurricane force winds pass us offshore.
Chris,
Prepared for you? You even pay attention when a storm's coming?
Yeah.
What the heck's the sense of getting
So
prepared for
you
it?
should have bought your
3 days ago.
battery.
Oh,
3 days ago.
I didn't even know.
But our effects...
prepared.
And the ocean was pretty rough, I think.
The ocean was pretty rough, and our effects started Wednesday morning. So on Tuesday, I called Jim Arnold in Ocean Rescue, and it was a great relief. They said that they were aware of the storm coming up, and they had all met, and they were going to make sure that they were stopping by the beaches and paying attention to what's going on. So, you know, it was good to see, and certainly made me feel a lot better, because when you get these early storms like this, we're still in summer mode, and there's so many individuals that just aren't aware of the surf, and you know, it was a big help to be able to turn to somebody and go, hey, could you watch? You know, so I thank them for volunteering. And going forward, we got a list a mile long of different events, from movies to concerts to Peter Marino shows opening up the end of July, which is going to be absolutely spectacular.
Full run of benefit season.
And full run of benefit season.
This weekend, and Leslie House was last weekend.
Yeah. I'm very poor at getting to these things, but you know, I've been really trying.
There's so many of them.
I know, yeah.
And going to these things makes you poor, but it is a good cause.
It does. I certainly think the salary I get for this is long gone already. Especially at one of them, when I saw my wife put her hand up, I went, oh,
Got a little carried away, huh?
yeah, she did get carried away.
Whoa, no, honey, we're not here for that. We're not here for that.
But it's all good. It's all for good events. You can't go wrong. And with that said, is there any public comment? Anybody have anything to tell us?
Everybody had anything to say left.
Well, with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.